Testing, testing. Audio check. Audio check, and then let's test the audio. Oh, jeez. That was weird. My audio is very strange right now. Don't know why. Audio. I don't know why my audio is very bizarre right now, but okay, I guess that we're okay. How does my audio sound to you guys? Sound okay? Okay, good. Howdy, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day. There was a report that came out yesterday, or 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a few days ago, that motivated me to do this topic again. So, in case you don't know, in 2025, at the beginning of 2025, around February, March, the Trump administration proposed a budget, as a standard, like the executive branch proposes a budget and then it gets fought over in Congress. So at the beginning of 2025, the Trump administration proposed a budget. In that budget, it included basically cutting all of the three-letter agencies that have to do with science by like 50%. So like huge budget slashes for all of our scientific research in the United States. And this is a problem because even though that budget hadn't passed, there were a lot of funding cuts that were, implemented kind of preemptively, a lot of grants that were canceled, etc. However, at the end of, and this budget was fought over for months. However, eventually the budget was rejected and much of the science funding continued. This was done by Congress, not by the Trump administration. However, as of like a week ago, or in the last week or so, the Trump administration has done it again. They've proposed a 2027 budget, which again slashes all of the funding, not all of, but like half of the funding for all of our scientific research for 2027. So we're back. I guess we didn't win. I guess it was just a temporary stopgap. Anyway, so let us bring up, oh, never mind, our first guest who was in the guest box, they left. So this is bad. It's bad and unfortunate. I can pull up the article. The relevant article. This was a like a news article that was published in Nature, which cuts the National Science Foundation, which is our biggest grant, well, I actually think it's our second biggest granting agency, by about 50%. Similarly, cutting the Environmental Protection Agency's funding by more than 50%. Cutting the National Institute of Health funding by 13%. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like that there's not really an interest here in promoting scientific research. So, yeah, no, this isn't just for nostalgia. This is more recent bad news. And of course, the reason why he's doing this is because he'd rather spend money on the military than spend money on science, because he doesn't really care about science. In fact, arguably, he's anti-science, given his behaviors and his priorities. So, make of that what you will. You can say that he's not anti-science and rather he's just pro-war, but when your actions and your proposals result in cutting our science funding by billions, it seems like anti-science to me. Which is unfortunate. It is very unfortunate. So we'll give it a little bit. We'll give it some time. We'll see if any guests pop up. Otherwise, we'll just start going over the data. Yeah, here it is. If he's not anti-science, it's because he's not even an agent. Yeah, fair. It's science that develops our weapons. Well, you might say that it's engineers, but yeah, sure. Morning, y'all. Morning, y'all, indeed. Don't think anyone told him how important science is. No, probably not. No, he probably doesn't know. But, you know, ignorance is not a defense. That's what they say, right? All right, let us bring up our first guest. Dawa Abdul Paba.
Salam alaikum.
Howdy.
Salam alaikum, brother.
How's it going?
So, you say, do you classify anything as MAGA that supports Trump?
I mean, not necessarily. If you support Trump because you just want lower taxes, then like you might not be MAGA.
I support Trump because who he is.
You support Trump because who he is? Okay, so that's kind of irrelevant to the conversation here. Do you think that MAGA, do you know what MAGA is?
Yeah, make America great again.
Okay, so yeah. So it's a movement, right? And so do you think that the MAGA movement is pro-science, anti-science, or neutral?
Given what policy?
I'm just asking about the movement as a whole.
I think that's a category
on balance.
error.
It's not a category error. It's just a question about the balance of the behaviors and ideologies associated with the movement.
Well, okay. Well, that's different. If you're talking about all the ideologies, ideologies themselves are not something by themselves to be pro-science or.
Sure, they are. What are you talking? You can literally be. Oh, is this PhD free? This might be. You literally can have an ideology of being pro-science. That is exactly the kind of thing that you can have. And ideologies can display pro or anti-science characteristics as well.
Okay, I'm saying they might be able to give off characteristics, but I'm saying them themselves, the policies themselves or ideologies, they can't be scientific.
Nobody's making a claim that they're scientific.
That's what you're making. Yes.
No, I'm saying pro or anti-science.
Oh, okay, well.
Do you have a hard time reading?
There's nothing to read.
It's literally in the background. MAGA is anti-science.
Okay, I'm not talking about that.
Okay, so you have a hard time reading. Got it.
Yeah, can you just tell me what Trump has done that goes against science?
Yeah, consider cutting the National Science Foundation funding, or at least proposing a cut for the National Science Foundation of 50%. Well, it's an anti-scientific policy decision.
So it doesn't go against science itself. It's going against potential research of science.
Yeah, that's what science is.
Science isn't research. No, it's not.
It literally is.
No, it's not.
Okay, then you just want to have a semantic dispute, which I guess is fine if you want to, but it just doesn't sound like you want to have substantive discussion here.
Science is an observation of the natural world where you have repeatability, producibility, and a conclusion.
No, it's the scientific method is what you're describing.
Yeah, okay, the scientific method goes into science. That's what the fuck I just said.
So the scientific method is not what is being referred to when we say that MAGA is anti-science.
I'm not
saying
that.
Science is okay,
I'm
good.
not saying that.
Then it seems like we don't have a disagreement. It seems like you think that you do agree that Trump is wholly invested in cutting and dismantling our scientific research capabilities.
Sure, what's wrong with that?
I'm not making a moral claim. I'm not making a normative claim here. I'm making a descriptive claim. Do you agree or disagree?
Wait, hold on.
Do you agree or disagree? Answer the question. Okay, you don't. Okay, you disagree. Great.
Go ahead. Okay. Just cutting somebody's. It's not even the entirety of all the research labs. It's just somebody. It's a private lab. Okay.
It's not a private lab.
It's not a public lab. No, it's not.
The National Science Foundation is not a public lab. Is not a public institution.
I didn't know you said national. My bad. I thought you referred to a college lab.
No. Also, most universities are public.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, most free ones. Yeah, sure.
Most free one? We're not talking about
private universities are not public.
Most universities, most R1
Private
universities, I should say. Obviously, private universities aren't public. Dipshit,
Okay.
like what the fuck?
Okay, I'm not talking about regular universities.
But regardless, we're not talking about universities at all. We're talking about the National Science Foundation.
Okay, the National Science Foundation. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Trump simply cutting. Can you give me a rundown of the numbers?
Yeah. So the proposal this year. Let me pull it up for you. The proposal this year is a greater than 50% budget cut, and I can get the exact numbers for you if you want. But I have to pull up the budget in particular.
I'm also asking.
So
the numbers for what?
Yeah, so the 2026 budget for the National Science Foundation is $8.8 billion. The 2027 proposed budget is $4 billion.
Okay, I'm more so asking about the numbers of what this will do to certain points of research within the national science.
Well, it would cut the available granting abilities by half, or by more than half in particular.
Okay, I want to know the numbers and the effect on the studies that this cut has had.
So the cut is proposed for 2027. It hasn't happened, so we don't know what the outcomes will be. The 2026 budget proposal by Trump in 2025 was rejected because of how destructive it would have been for our scientific research capabilities. So Trump's attempt to cut the National Science Foundation in 2025 for the 2026 fiscal year failed because everybody in Congress, even the Republicans, recognized how destructive it was.
Okay.
So we don't have data on how bad it would be because it hasn't happened yet. However, what we can say, or what we can see from last year, is that when the budget proposal was announced, thousands of grants were just canceled, kind of preemptively, and those grants haven't come back. And so these are research projects that would have been funding. It's directly Trump's fault.
Okay, wait, that's not Trump's fault.
It's directly Trump's fault.
Wait, Trump didn't tell him to cut the grants.
Who do you think made the decision to cut the grants?
No, I'm saying Trump didn't tell them to take their grants.
Who do you think made the decision?
Who made the decision?
Yeah.
Congress.
No, it wasn't Congress. No, it was the head of the National Science Foundation who was appointed by Trump.
Yes, okay, but before that person gets orders, okay, it goes to Congress. It goes to the people of Congress.
It didn't go to Congress. That's not what happened.
It goes to the people of Congress. It goes to the secretary.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
this didn't pass through Congress at all.
Wait, hold on. This goes to the chief of orders in the White House before it goes anywhere.
That's not Congress.
Yes, it is.
The chief of orders?
That's a congressman.
In the White House?
Yes, that's a person that works from Congress. That's in the White House. That always advises.
So to be clear, Trump proposed Trump's administration, it's not clear if Trump actually had a direct effect on this, but Trump proposed a budget cut in 2025, this was the beginning of 2025, for 2026 to cut the National Science Foundation, NASA, the NIH, etc. Yes, pro-science, cutting the scientific organizations. And as a consequence of the budget proposal, Trump's hand-picked man, who was in charge of the National Science Foundation, ordered his underlings to start cutting grants, to start dropping grants.
Look, I could tell you why
this did not pass through Congress.
Okay. All that you said, I think is in benefit to my belief.
I'm not making a normative claim. I'm just making the claim that it is descriptively true that Trump is anti-science and MAGA and more generally is anti-science.
Okay, I can tell you why that's not cutting funding. Okay, to science. You do realize they do nothing but bullshit all day, so it gets them working.
Who does nothing but bullshit all day?
Scientists.
Oh, I don't grant that.
Okay, can you give me one paper where they had a breakthrough?
Yeah, there was a paper
in the past month.
Yeah, there was a paper that came out that showed that pill.
Hold on, I don't want none of your pseudoscience. I want real science.
There was a paper that came out. There was a paper that came out that did studies on humans that showed that a pill was able to compete and even in some cases be more effective than CPAPs to treat sleep apnea.
That's bullshit. Who the fuck? Nobody suffers with sleep. Sleep like what? No.
This has got to be a troll. This has got to be a troll, right?
I want something helpful to society.
Nobody suffers from sleep apnea. Do you want to put money on that?
Okay. People could suffer from it, but it's not a lot. Like.
Do you want to put money on that?
That's okay. That's like me saying that just because like 3,000 dogs die.
Do you want to put money on that?
from a blender, that means that I create a cure for it. And
Do you
then all
want
of us like, no, that's something very
I
specific.
know this is
need
free. I
something
know this is
big.
free. Roughly 26% of adults aged 30 to 70 have some form of sleep apnea.
Okay, 20% is not shit.
26%.
Then where's the 50s? Where's the, like, he didn't discover anything.
26% is one of the most, is like an enormous chunk of the population. This is
No,
tens
it's
of
not.
millions
It's
of
not
people.
even half.
This is
It's
tens
less
of
than
millions
half.
of people.
Okay, compared to what? Compared to 10 billion.
What are you talking about?
Compared to 10 billion, that's not anything.
What are you
you're laughing
talking about?
because
We're
you're
talking
nervous.
about the United States. We're talking about sleep apnea,
Okay,
which is
in
a
the United
serious
States,
health
that's
issue.
fine. What about around the world?
I mean, I can get you numbers on the percentage
Yes,
of
give
people
me numbers.
around the world
Give me
who have
numbers.
sleep apnea.
Yes, give me numbers.
How are you still breathing? How do you not forget?
I didn't forget anything.
Yeah, how do you not forget to keep breathing?
How do I not forget to keep breathing? Because I have a nervous system that keeps firing electricity.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the people who have sleep apnea don't. And so it's a good thing to fix that. Get chat on.
That's fake. Okay, wait. People with sleep apnea can get treated in the hospital. So what?
And do you think that's a good use of money? That they should suffocate and then be brought to the hospital in an ambulance, and that's a good use of money?
Bro,
that should happen every night?
Okay,
that's literally what sleep apnea is.
Nobody is born with that, bro.
I don't know if that's true. Do you have any evidence to back that up?
Nobody is born with that. It's like somebody suffering from type 2 diabetes. Okay, you got that by yourself. Nobody gave you type 2 diabetes. You got that from eating junk food and not doing shit all day.
Yes, people can be born with conditions that predispose them to sleep apnea or develop it in infancy.
No, okay, nobody's born with it though. So
some are.
Can get it later
some are
on.
apparently. Apparently some are.
No, that you get that later on.
Nope, you're just wrong about this.
I can give you. Wait, hold on. Show me where it says that.
Premature babies can suffer from apnea, which is what sleep apnea is, due to
Babies don't even
underdeveloped
need to fucking
systems.
breathe if they're Oh, wait, no. If they're outside of it, they need to breathe, but in the stomach, they don't need to breathe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about babies that are already born. I'm talking about babies that just came out.
Yeah, sorry, do you think that babies that just came out are already born?
Yeah.
Okay, so they can have apnea.
Oh wait, hold on. No baby that was just been born has sleep apnea.
Some do.
Show me.
It's apparently especially prevalent in premature babies.
Show me.
Okay.
Show me one baby.
Yeah. Wait, you want me to show you a baby?
Show me one baby that was born a couple seconds after they were born. They got sleep apnea.
Here.
You'll never find it.
I literally have it pulled up.
Okay, well, show me. And I want the name of the baby.
You want the name? Oh, this is such bad faith. Premature infants are at a greater risk of having sleep apnea. Therefore, if you have premature babies, it is very important to watch for these signs and symptoms of infant sleep apnea. Have certain heart problems, for example. Premature is
already born, nigga.
Yeah, we're talking about babies that have left the uterus.
Bro, okay, okay, that's not talking about right after they were born, though. I'm talking about right after they were born. Like fresh out the womb.
Premature babies. What do you think an infant is?
Okay, wait. A premature baby has already been incubated and all that shit. Like,
what do you mean incubate? What are you talking about?
A premature baby, they already put it in the incubator for it to get oxygen. Because
not all premature babies go into an incubator.
All premature babies, if they don't get care, they die.
Not all premature babies need to go into an incubator.
Every single premature baby,
it's literally not true.
Premature, they die.
If they're severely premature, yeah, dipshit.
Okay, if they're severely,
we're not talking about severely premature.
If they're premature, then anything less than 4 months, they're gone.
So sleep apnea occurs in 84% of infants who weigh less than 2.2 pounds in the first month.
Okay.
And it is about 25% of infants who weigh less than 5.5 pounds in the first month. So we're talking about right after birth. This is within the first month.
After a week of birth.
For premature babies, signs and symptoms might appear between the 2nd and 7th day after birth. So this is literally within 2 days of birth.
Okay, I'm talking. Did you not hear me say seconds?
They're not sleeping within seconds, dipshit. This is hilarious.
No, but
he's gone. I mean, he's clearly not here in good faith. What do you mean within seconds? How would it be within seconds if they weren't sleeping yet? What? They have to, in order for them to have sleep apnea, they have to sleep, and they're not born asleep. What a time to be alive. All right, let me hydrate some. That guy was loudly stupid, you're right. Sorry, I just gotta adjust something. There we go. Maybe he was born asleep. I don't know. Like maybe that's what happened. Maybe he was born asleep and maybe he had sleep apnea, so he lost some oxygen to his brain. I can't explain it otherwise. From C-Bar with the $2 or with the $3, thank you so much. And from Herman Preet with the $5, does Free not have anything better to do than show his ass on multiple lives? No, he doesn't, but he does make good content. And Dex, thank you for the GOAT trophy. I do appreciate you. He just wanted to argue. He didn't actually have a point. But that's fine. Let's bring up Slade. Slade, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing okay. Slade, would you consider yourself MAGA?
That's kind of where I wanted to start, but for the sake of it, I suppose Make America Great Again isn't like the best, I guess, thing to support. But for the sake of it, I suppose so. I'm not exactly against Trump, that's for sure.
So look, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask. These are, it's just for like a, it's not quite a survey, but just for my own interest. Just a few questions, simple yes or no answers, and then we can talk about the answers that you give afterwards. But I just want to get through those questions really quick. Is that fair?
Understood.
So first, you said that you would consider yourself MAGA, or would you consider yourself just more kind of generically conservative, or perhaps neither?
To be completely fair, I would say I am definitely more moderate, in the middle, leaning right, more so than left.
That's fine. Now, would you say that humans are would you say that if climate change is happening, that humans are the main cause of it?
I don't have the best information on that, but to be, I guess,
you can say that you're unsure. You can say that you're unsure. Yeah. That's also a valid answer.
I have no idea, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay. Would you say that most of the vaccines that we give to infants, these are things like Tdap and MMR, would you say that most of these vaccines are generally safe and effective?
Yes.
Okay. And would you say that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, so you said that you're kind of moderate, leaning right. So what's your take on the background here? Would you say that like the MAGA movement, the MAGA ideology, if you will, is anti-science, pro-science, perhaps somewhere in the middle?
That's where I have a hard time, dividing politics from the actual scientific. I would say that politics are a different sect of, I guess, science, but that's not what we're discussing. I would say it's more of a metaphysical, maybe even philosophical endeavor rather than a scientific, numerical kind of one. But still, with MAGA, I do think MAGA as a whole is more of a fringe, heavy emphasis on strange ideas. Make America Great Again. Do look at other things that aren't as important for the bigger topics. So
just to be clear, are you aware that like the majority of Republican voters consider themselves MAGA?
Okay, that's where I have a question for you. What is your definition of MAGA? Because I think I have a slightly.
I mean, I would just say whatever the people who call themselves MAGA are. I mean, you could say like generally people who ideologically align themselves with basically whatever Trump says. You could say that it's sort of like an offshoot of the Tea Party movement. I don't know if you remember that from like the early 2010s. It's sort of like an offshoot of that, where it's very Christian oriented, not exclusively Christian, but it's like a very it's very focused on like national religiosity. It's very focused on some degree of isolationism, very focused on showing power like through military might or through things along those lines. So it's it's that kind of thing. I would say generally it's a pretty hard idea to define, but there are people who call themselves MAGA. And so I would just use whatever they're associated with, whatever that group of people kind of centers around.
So even if, you know, a very well-known scientist called themselves MAGA, would you say that would be justifiable, or would that person now be anti-science?
I would say that their political ideology is anti-science, yeah.
Okay, now I see where we're at. Okay, then actually, I'd rather not waste time. I agree with you more than I disagree with you, and I don't think I would be able to give up a good opposing argument.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you for being here, Slade. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
How do I?
All right, let's talk to RJM. He was kind. RJM, how's it going?
Hey, Dr. Blitz, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. RJM, before we start, would you call yourself MAGA, or at least MAGA affiliated?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, so why'd you come up?
So listen, so first of all, I'm so happy that you're healthy. I'm a huge fan. I've always wanted to talk to you. I have like a nuanced take on this. I candidly mostly agree with you. But if you want to have that debate, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I'd be happy to drop down and let you talk to someone else.
Well, so the background does say opposition only. So I am going to let you go.
I mean, I am sort of. Can I at least say what I want to say, and then
sure, go ahead.
Decide?
Go ahead.
So I guess the way I view it is that. So I'm not a Trump fan at all. I've never voted for him. I'm kind of more of a moderate or left person. I think it's almost a category error to say that Trump is anti-science, because I think Trump, specifically Trump and like politicians in general, are in it for themselves. Like, I think that Trump only cares about things that are going to get him incremental support, incremental votes when he's running. Obviously, or hopefully he's not running anymore. And I guess my proof of that is that, like, or one of the proofs I think of that is that he.
That just doesn't disagree with the position here. You can be self-centered, and that self-centeredness can lead to anti-science behavior and anti-science policy.
Well, so I guess my counter to that would be that, like, in fairness to Trump, and again, I'm not a fan of his at all. In fairness to him, like, he's probably one of the main reasons why the Artemis mission is happening, right? Like, in his first term, he was very pro.
The Artemis mission has been in development for 15 years.
Right, but I think it's, and again, I'm not trying to defend Trump in any way. Like, I've never supported him, just to be clear on that. But, like, I think it's also fair to say that he very much in his first term saw the idea of, like, us sending people back to the moon, and the fact that China was, like, obviously starting to work on that in the middle of the last decade. Like, clearly he saw a political benefit to being on the side of science in that instance.
Well, to be clear, space exploration is not the same thing as science, right?
Oh, no, I agree. But I think in Trump's mind, he sees that, like, being in that aspect of it and being in support of something like the Artemis mission is good for him politically. So, well, I think that, and this is, it's
kind of neither here nor there, though.
Okay, I mean, that's.
I mean, like the point is that the NASA has two main branches of funding, right? There's the space exploration branch and then the science branch. And he's consistently attempted to cut the science branch. And even if that means that he also wants to increase the space exploration branch, perhaps by less, which it was in his proposal for last year, that doesn't mean that he's pro-science in any way, because he's cutting the science branch, right?
Yeah, I think he's indifferent towards science. Like, I guess maybe that's where the nuance of my, like, I just don't think he cares about, like, science. And I guess maybe the other part of this
what it
is
sounds. It sounds like that's what being anti-science is. Oh, you don't care about science? Oh, it sounds like it's anti-science. Look, RJM, I do have a guest in the that's waiting on Discord.
Yeah, go for it.
So
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
let you
much.
go.
I'm so happy you're healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Take care. All right, let's bring up a guest from Discord. Strugatsky Enjoyer, whoever that is. Never heard of that person. Strugatsky Enjoyer, how's it going?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Strugatsky, first, I have no idea who Strugatsky is. I hope that won't be relevant for a conversation. Would you call yourself MAGA or perhaps MAGA adjacent?
Well, I used to be a pretty big Democrat, and then I don't know, MAGA started to make sense to me a lot more after I took up huffing paint recreationally. Knock 'em dead, Blitz is a great topic.
Get out of here. That is funny though. That is pretty funny. When you, I can understand that. Yeah, you would. It's funny. Good meme. Yeah, I know it was quiet. I don't. I have to manually adjust everybody who comes in because I have to, actually, maybe there's a way that I can do that automatically. No, there isn't. Okay, well, and I didn't have time to manually adjust his volume. So it is what it is. Right, so if you guys think that MAGA is not pro-science, sorry, if you guys think that MAGA is pro-science, or perhaps even neutral on it, feel free to join. There's currently nobody in the guest box. If you want to make a point, I'm not making any descriptive claim. I'm not making a normative claim, I'm making a descriptive claim. So if you want to bring the data, if you want to bring the evidence that MAGA is indeed pro-science, or perhaps even neutral regarding science, feel free to hop in the box. I would prefer that the person I'm talking to is indeed MAGA, or at least MAGA adjacent. That makes the conversation more interesting, because otherwise somebody's kind of arguing, what's the word? Kind of as a devil's advocate, if you will. But nonetheless, it is a conversation that's worth having. Now, it's possible that there just are no people who are in the guest box. There are no people in the chat, rather, who think that MAGA is not anti-science, because MAGA perhaps agrees with me. Perhaps MAGA does agree with me that MAGA is anti-science. In which case, I think we've won, right? By the way, we just got a $10 Cash App from Grimlock for hydration for thine streamlords. Stay safe. Well, thank you so much, Grimlock. I appreciate you. Let me read through some super chats, at least one. From Empiricist with the $2. Why expect good faith from maggots? Contradiction. Yeah, so, I mean, it is the case that these kinds of conversations often devolve into bad faith behaviors. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that we can't have good faith conversation, especially if you're disarmingly calm as I am. Let's talk to John Stone. John Stone, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing okay. John Stone, would you call yourself MAGA?
Yes.
Okay. Do you mind if I just ask you a few questions, just so I then, for my own edification, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty?
Sure.
Oh, we've spoken before, John.
Have we? Yeah.
I see your name on my chart. So do you remember what we talked about? Because it was definitely months ago.
I think we talked. I believe in a spirit world, so we might have talked about that a little bit. And I think we talked about. I never got the C-19 vax either, so we might have talked about those things.
Okay. But you think that MAGA is not anti-science?
On some things, maybe, if you're saying like, this is all my personal opinion, but I believe in evolution, and the Earth is about 4 billion years old. So probably a lot of people in MAGA don't believe those things. But I think that the left is much more anti-science than MAGA, specifically in terms of something like evolution, because you believe in evolution, right?
Yeah, and as does the rest of the scientific community.
Right. All right. So yeah, like I said, this is all my personal opinion, and I know this where this will go.
Do you not believe in evolution?
I do.
Okay.
I do believe in evolution, but see, the problem is that the political correctness of the left doesn't, where the road of evolution leads, the political left finds blasphemous.
Where does evolution lead that the political left doesn't like?
There are average differences in IQ among races.
What's a race?
A cluster of ethnicities.
Okay, so are you taking averages across ethnicities, or are you, and how are you delineating races? How are you deciding to group those ethnicities in such a way to call it a race? For example, would the Amazigh be considered, what race would the Amazigh ethnicity be considered?
I've never heard of that.
They're an ethnic group that's indigenous to North Africa.
Okay. Yeah, so okay, so like for example, like ethnicities would be a cluster. So like Vietnamese, people
Well, you
from
said that
Laos.
race is a cluster of ethnicities. So I'm just asking which
Right.
race does the Amazigh ethnicity belong to?
You said they're again, I'm not familiar, but you said they're North African?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, race can be a little bit blurry, right? So there's white, there's black, there's Asian, but so like people from like India, I wouldn't really consider them, or from the Middle East for that matter. I really wouldn't consider, you know, part. So I know it's a little bit blurry in
So if
some
it's
way.
blurry, how can you make the claim that there's like, distinct differences between races if the races themselves are not even well defined?
Well, it's blurry because there's been a lot of conquering in history, right? For one thing, right? So like for example, Spain, right, was the Iberia was conquered in the 14th century by the Moors, right? So this is why, like, yeah, Spain would be considered white, but because of the Moorish invasion, there's going to be, darker features, for example. Same thing, something similar with Turkey, right? So Turkey would be kind of considered European, but also Middle Eastern. So this is why I say it's blurry. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it just seems like if the claim is that race, the delineation of race itself is blurry, then it seems like you're going to have a hard time making the claim that there are distinct differences between in IQ across races if you can't even define what a race is.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we can look at countries and we can see what their average IQ are, right? Like, for example, like in China, the average IQ is about 105, something similar with Japan.
So to be clear,
Right.
countries and races are not the same thing.
Yeah, but Japanese would be an ethnicity, right?
Right, and it's also not a race.
It's part of the Asian race, East Asians.
Yeah, so what race is Morocco?
So they would be part. I would consider them like Middle Eastern, North African. Yeah.
So they're North African is a race now?
Not black, if that's what you're asking.
Well, what race are they? You said that there's white, there's black, there's Asian. What race are they?
Morocco?
Yeah.
I'd say Middle Eastern.
Is Middle Eastern a race?
Yeah, I think it can be either like Arab or Persian, for example.
Those are ethnicities. Actually, Arab's not even an ethnicity, it's an ethno-linguistic group, but Persian is surely, at least arguably, it's an ethnicity.
Well, what relationship do you think ethnicity is to race?
I don't think that race is like some well-defined thing that has well-defined boundaries, and that is a particularly. I also don't think it's a particularly useful category.
Okay, but could we just define how we believe in evolution? For example, okay, here's my basic picture, but you can tell me if you agree or disagree, okay? That humans descended from Homo erectus about 300,000 years ago, right? Out of Africa. Humans left Africa about 100,000 years ago. There were two ice ages. Right?
Well, so humans left Africa, then came back to Africa, then left. There was a lot of intermixing, but yes.
Right. So there were two ice ages. The first occurred about 70,000 years ago. The other was about 28,000 years ago. And this is where differences in hair texture and skin color and the. Are you familiar with cold weather theory by Richard Lynn? Like,
no, I'm not familiar with weather theory.
But the general picture that I described, the leaving Africa about 100,000 years ago into Europe, into Asia, crossing the Bering Strait about 12,000 years ago is where we have modern day Native Americans. Are we in agreement on this?
That's the standard story. I know it's in contention by some people, but sure.
You think that's about right? Okay, so why would you believe that humans would evolve the same in terms of IQ or anything? Not just skin color.
Oh yeah, we had this conversation. I remember this now. So the point is that internal changes take significantly longer to occur than external changes do, evolutionarily speaking.
Well, Ashkenazi Jewish people have among the highest IQs, right? And it's actually theorized that IQ elevated about 500 or so years ago. So it can be more close than you think.
How does that address what I said?
when you just told me that intelligence would be something that skin color or lip size or these sorts of things.
Yeah, surface level changes happen significantly faster than deeper organ level changes.
So when I say that Ashkenazi Jewish IQ elevated 500 or so years ago,
I don't know how you. I have no idea how you would make that claim when we didn't have IQ tests 500 years ago.
Well, I mean, Ashkenazi Jewish people would be they're more of a recent phenomenon, right? I mean, the people left Israel when Rome sacked the temple around 70 AD. Are we in agreement on that? And that's where Jewish people spread into Europe, right? So Jewish people, Ashkenazi Jewish people as a ethnicity are not that old, right? Just a few thousand years. Are we in agreement or no?
Sure.
Okay. So then that would be an example. And you agree that the average IQ of Ashkenazi Jewish people is about 110?
I don't know the numbers on that.
Okay.
Perhaps it's true. The history of the Ashkenazi Jewish people is particularly interesting, and there's a reason why so many Ashkenazi Jews have I don't want to say genetic disorders, but heritable disorders. Crohn's disease is particularly prevalent in an Ashkenazi Jewish population. Tay-Sachs is specifically essentially an Ashkenazi Jewish hereditary disease. And this is because the Ashkenazi Jewish population had a very, very very strong founding effect. Basically, there was a huge bottleneck where basically all Ashkenazi Jews descend from like a few hundred people max. And so whatever traits those few hundred people would have had, that would have been passed down to their descendants in a very, very strong way. Now, that's very unusual as far as populations go. Very few populations are that restricted on how they interact with surrounding populations, and very few populations have such strong founding effects as well. So if you want to make the claim that the Ashkenazi Jewish people have a higher IQ than, and despite having a short ethnic heritage of a few thousand years, you perhaps can make that claim. However, that claim or that piece of data is not in conflict with the general trend that internal changes happen significantly more slowly than external changes, because the reason for those significant internal changes is the result of a founding effect.
Okay, so the cold weather theory would state that it was harder to survive in cold weather climates, and this is where, are you familiar with like high frequency alleles? This is supposed to be
this sounds a lot like the kind of thing that you would want to defend if you wanted to defend like some sort of race realism, which is fine, but I'd be curious, and it seems like you're well read on race realism, so kudos to you. I'd be curious how much you've actually read that conflicts with your view.
No, I mean, I've talked to a lot of you all on the left.
That wasn't my question. How much have you read that conflicts with your view?
How much have I read in terms of like IQ development?
In terms of, discussions about IQ, discussions about what race is, discussions about the evolutionary history of humans, etc. I'm curious about how much you've read. Because it sounds like you've read a lot about stuff that supports your race realist view.
No, I've read, so for example, I don't really, I like to watch more documentaries. I mean, I read some, but I'm not a super fast reader, so I like to watch them. I just process it better. So I've watched a lot of like Flynn, right? Like he debated Charles Murray. So I have seen the counterpoints.
Okay. What's the counterpoint?
That it's virtually all environmental. That discrimination and access to resources and proper nutrition and good prenatal care, these sorts of things are the primary drivers of IQ rather than something more heritable.
Okay, and how is that a counterpoint to your claim that weather? How is that a counterpoint to this weather theory that you're proposing?
Well, it's a counterpoint because the heritability or the biological basis, I think it's a combination, right, of environment and nature nurture. But it's a counterpoint because it would be it's impossible for the left to accept this because of the
well,
desire.
Hold on. Actually, there seems like, sorry to cut you off. There seems like there's a direct contradiction in the view. If the claim is that colder weather is harder to survive in and thus requires a higher degree of, critical thinking and perhaps a higher IQ or something in order to survive effectively, and so you would have some sort of selection effect for that. It's just not the case that East Asia is colder than Europe, right?
Well, but this is why I mentioned the ice ages, 70,000, 50,000 years ago. It was part of the evolutionary process.
Okay, so what's the evolutionary explanation for why, according to you, East Asian ethnicities have higher IQs than Europeans?
They have a little bit larger brain size on average.
So what's the evolutionary explanation, and how does your cold theory account for that?
Well, I've explained it here. I'll pull up a little more. There, one sec. I'll pull up something a little more detailed here. But essentially that surviving the cold weather changed the alleles, the high frequency alleles, right? Also the brain size.
That seems like it's not addressing the contention here. You're making the contention that Europeans have a higher IQ than Africans for whatever reason, because you think that, and your explanation is that, ice ages make it harder to survive, and so if you want to survive, you have to be able to think and solve problems more effectively, which would mean that you would select for higher IQ, correct? That's the claim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Now, what is the explanation then? Using that theory, what is the explanation for why East Asians, on average, according to you, have higher IQs than Europeans? What's the explanation?
Well, both Europeans and East Asians lived in cold environments for thousands of years. But are you asking specifically why is East Asian a little bit higher?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. What is the explanation?
There's a little bit difference in a higher degree of spatial IQ among East Asians, I believe, right? And also, like I said, the brain size is a little bit bigger too.
What's the explanation for that difference?
Oh, so Europeans as opposed to East Asia.
What is the explanation in your view?
The 5-point IQ. Well, I gave it to you. The brain size is a little bit different.
No, hold on. You keep saying things. What's the cause?
The cause of
your explanation for why the European IQ is higher is because it had to exist in this ice age. That doesn't account for why the East Asian IQ is even higher still. So what is the cause there?
Had to live among the ice age too, or do you disagree?
They both had to.
Right.
So why is the East Asian IQ higher, according to you, if they had the same environmental or similar environmental conditions?
Well, it's going to be a little bit different, and it's not going to be exactly the same.
Oh, so now all of a sudden your theory can't account for these differences?
No. Here, let me give you the.
To be clear, a 5-point average difference is significant.
It's much. Look, the average IQ in sub-Saharan Africa fluctuates between the high 50s and low 70s.
So to be clear, do you think that is the intrinsic? Do you think that is the? Do you think that if you take two infants, one with European ancestry and one with sub-Saharan African ancestry, and then brought them to and raised them identically, do you think that the difference would be that significant?
No, but it would still be higher.
Okay, so how big do you think that difference would be? Because that's the thing that you're really trying to compare. You're really trying to compare things that don't depend on environmental factors.
The environment versus the genetics.
Right. Right. You're making the claim that there is still a significant genetic difference that doesn't have anything to do with environment. So if you're making that claim, you need to tell me what you think that difference would be if you removed all environmental differences.
I think the environment accounts for maybe, just in general, probably about 7 points.
Okay. Do you have any data that backs that up? Do you have any data that backs that up?
Probably fine. That's just my instinct on it. You asked for a number, so yeah. I mean, that's that.
Okay, so it's your view that with identical child rearing, with identical environments, if you take an infant from sub-Saharan Africa and an infant from, let's say, your average infant from sub-Saharan Africa and your average infant from, say, Northern Europe, that the IQ difference between the two will be on the order of, quickly doing some math, on the order of 35 points. That's your view?
35 points that no, I think the environmental part of IQ on average is about 4 to 7 points. Yeah,
right, and so you made the claim that that the average IQ of sub-Saharan African people was 50 to 70. And so if environmental factors are 5 to 7 points, that means that removing environmental factors, you would get an average IQ of 55 to 75 points. Or an average IQ of 55 to 75, even if you raised somebody from sub-Saharan Africa with this, in exactly the same way that you raised somebody from, say, Scandinavia or whatever. And so if that's your view, that means that you are supposing, and the average person from Northern Europe is going to have an IQ of 100. So that means that you're proposing that even under identical child rearing conditions, that the average sub-Saharan African would have an IQ of 65. Which is, 5 points higher than the average between 50 and 70. So you're saying that the average Northern European would have an IQ that's 35 points higher than the average sub-Saharan African, even given identical child rearing conditions. Is that your claim?
It seems a little bit high, but
it seems enormous, and it just goes to show exactly the kind of views that you're using to drive this point of view that you hold. Because if you're making the claim that if you just pull a baby from sub-Saharan Africa and you plop them down and say they're adopted into the United States, that they would be diagnosed as intellectually disabled, severely intellectually disabled with an IQ of 65 is crazy to me.
Well, but as I said, I mean if the average IQ in some places is in the low 70s or mid 70s, it's going to be a little bit higher, right?
You're telling me that if you adopted a child from sub-Saharan Africa, or let's say that you sponsored a mother from sub-Saharan Africa, and so that the mother got exceedingly good neonatal care, and then you adopted the child and brought them to the United States, and you're like a well-off family, and then you raise them in a good school, good home environment, all of these things. Your claim is that on average, that child would be intellectually disabled.
No, I mean not necessarily. I mean, because
they would have at most, you said. So you said between 50 and 70. So let's take the high end. They would have an IQ of 75. That is the threshold for intellectual disability. If I remember correctly. Sorry, an IQ score of 70 or below is actually, apparently, I guess it's 70 or 75. So you would have so the average person would be right on the threshold of being intellectually disabled in your view.
I mean, not necessarily, but certainly.
Something's got to give, because the math ain't mathin'.
So your view is that you think that what? Let me ask you then. How many points do you think on average is attributable to genetics?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
No.
What do you think?
I don't know. I would suspect that it's a fairly small amount.
Well, are we in agreement that IQ is part environment and part genetic, part culture?
My understanding is that IQ cap seems to be part genetic. It's not clear to me that actual IQ, that realized IQ, is particularly strongly genetic at all. But I haven't looked into this because I don't spend time obsessing over race science.
Look, I'm telling you that the reason I'm going over this with you, I'm telling you the problem with third world immigration and the problem of equity, right? Mm-hmm. North and South Korea have very close average IQs, and North Korea lives in much more poverty than South Korea, right? So yeah, I mean the difference between North and South, I'd say it's probably about 5.
Well, the question is not like how rich they are. The question is how much education do they have? And North Korea still has education. It still has a robust education system. And how much neonatal care do they have? And how much what their nutrition is. And it's not clear to me that their neonatal care is particularly bad. I don't know anything about the status of nutrition in North Korea. I imagine that you probably don't either. So I'd actually be very surprised to see if there was any how well studied the IQ is of North Korean people, to be honest. But so we always hear all the time about access to resources, but maybe it's not so much access to resources, it is a culture's emphasis on the importance of education. Well, no, I mean, so there would be 3 environmental factors that are relevant, right? There's neonatal care, there's nutrition, and there's education.
Right.
Those are the 3 relevant environmental factors. And if you have a robust education system, even if you're poor, you're still going to have a robust education system.
Okay.
That is a resource that you have access to, even if you don't personally have access to a lot of money.
So by that logic, then in the United States, so it's not really about funding as much as it is about kind of drive for education.
By the way, hold on. And I just had to double check this. Apparently, North Korean IQ is not well studied or understood. So I'd love to see her claim that they have like the same IQ as, like, North Koreans have the same IQ as South Koreans.
Yeah, I've found that. I found 98, 99 in North Korea and about 103 in South Korea was the numbers I found.
That's a huge difference.
5 points?
Yeah.
Dude, 5 points is not that
much. That's a third of standard deviation. Across an entire country, that's a pretty big difference.
Okay.
Also, I'd love to see the source of this claim. Like, is the source coming from like Facebook or where?
I can try if you want. I can try and pull it up for you. That's yeah. I did find what you said, where there was kind of some places said, well, it's hard to get accurate data, but I found some places that did say like, 99 or so, and 103 was.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm sure.
So if you want a source on that, I can try and find it.
Yeah, sure, that'd be good.
Okay. I'm pulling it up now.
Yeah.
IQ Career Lab. Average IQ in North Korea 102. IQ.
And what's the source for that?
IQCareerLab.com.
No, I mean, what's the source for that number?
Here, let me go to it. The website was. You don't want the website?
I mean, like IQ Lab. Okay, I'll just go to IQ Lab, and maybe it's .com. Maybe they'll provide the source somewhere on their website. But like, I'm asking for like the study that conducted the analysis, right? I'm not asking for like some website. So it's IQLab.com and then North Korea IQ or something like.
Here we go. Lynn and Van Hanen.
Lynn. What's the last name?
Lynn, Lynn. That's probably Richard Lynn would be my guess.
And then Van what?
Hanen, Hanen.
North Korea. Okay, let's see if we can find that. Oh, it's one word, Van Hanen. Okay. Okay, let's go see if we can find. Van Hanen. Okay, so this is a book. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is a book entitled "IQ and the Wealth of Nations." Right? That's the reference. That's the reference that's being made here. Okay. So you have psychologist Richard Lynn and political scientist Tato Van Hanen. So, do you know if in the book they cite where this number is coming from?
I don't, man. I just.
Okay, yes, because I'm looking for the source of like the actual study that did the analysis. Also, apparently the book has, quote, the book has drawn widespread criticism from other academics. Critiques have included questioning of the methodology used, the incompleteness of the data, and the conclusions drawn from the data. So, apparently on July 27, 2020, the European Human Behavior and Evolution Association issued a formal statement opposing the utilization of Lynn's national IQ dataset, citing various methodological concerns. They concluded, quote, any conclusions drawn from analyses which use these data are therefore unsound and no reliable evolutionary work should be using these data. So, maybe this isn't the best source that we should be using to come to our, to draw our conclusions about the way the world is?
What do you think the average IQ in North Korea is?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, okay, so I find you asked me for a source. This is the problem with.
But the source is not a trustworthy source, is the claim.
Well, maybe you just don't like what the source says.
I haven't read it. I'm just reading what the European Human Behavior and Evolution Association is saying.
Well, it goes against your worldview, right?
I'm just reading what the European Human Behavior and Evolution Association said. They made a formal statement citing that conclusions drawn from this book are unsound.
Okay, man.
And surely they know more about behavior and evolution than you or I do, right?
Look, man, I think that college is actually, I went to college, all right, so I'm not, look, I did go, I got a 4-year degree, but I think college is a big part of your problem on the left, man.
College is a problem.
Yes, it is. It has to do with postmodernism in the Frankfurt School and
right,
Hollywood.
Okay.
Look, I know it's ironic I support Israel, okay? But you believe
this is sounding very Jewish Kabbalah, by the way.
Look, a lot of the deranged belief systems on the left came from people like Herbert Marcuse, right, and Horkheimer, and Derrida. All right, Derrida. This is why we always hear about deconstruction. Okay, so yes, college is a big part of your problem.
Yes, we should not educate people. That's definitely a good solution to solve the world's problems.
Dr. Blitz, the right thinks that you all are crazy. Don't you understand?
John, you are the right.
Okay. I'm just trying to tell you that race and gender are not social constructs. They're biological.
You couldn't even define what race is.
I told you what race is. It's a cluster of ethnicities.
Yeah, and then when I asked you what particular race a particular ethnicity belonged to, you couldn't answer. So clearly, it's not so well defined.
Well, wait a minute here. You want to Europeans, Africans, South Asians, and North Africans, Southeast Asians, Australian Aborigines, Pacific Islanders, East Asians, Arctic people, Native Americans.
Those are races?
Bushmen. They call them populations.
Okay, so they're not races?
I did say, right, it can be blurry because there's a long history. Look, are white people European? Are Irish?
Some of them are.
Ethnically Irish people, are they European? Are they white? Like, if I take, can I be black?
Sure.
Can I be African?
I mean, well, I don't think that you can be African. I imagine that you're not black. I don't know what you look like. I don't know who you are. So.
Well, my picture's right there, but
I didn't know how. I can't know if that's a picture of you or not. I mean, it doesn't. It looks like you're a white guy.
Okay, but my point is, I can't be black. It's not socially constructed. If I do a DNA test, they're going to tell me
what it means to be black is absolutely socially constructed. Oh, he was. Oh no, never mind. I thought he wasn't booted. He's still here. I just got a notification.
Did I get a?
No. It's fine. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It was just like an inactivity thing. Look, it sounds like that you have very, very strong feelings about black people. And it sounds like you have very, very strong feelings about universities and colleges, which just makes it seem like, and, you know, not putting this on you, but I'm sure you don't want to come across this way, that you just seem like the uneducated racist of the South that is so stereotypical. Like, that's just how you're coming across. And if you don't want to come across that way, I don't know, maybe change the way you think about things?
Well, what if I just point out to you average IQ, that's racist to you, that average IQ of American black people?
Well, it seemed like the claim, the at least one of the places that you derived your data set from is apparently not to be trusted. And the other claim that you made specifically about sub-Saharan African people was, you know, when we followed it logically to its conclusion, was that if you took an infant from sub-Saharan Africa who had perfect neonatal care and brought them to the United States, on average, they would be intellectually disabled. And that's obviously false.
I didn't say all of them would be.
No, but that is the conclusion of your line of reasoning. That is the logical conclusion of your line of reasoning. But the average sub-Saharan African infant with perfect neonatal care brought to the United States and raised in the United States by, you know, a decently well-off family, of course, your logical conclusion is that they would be, on average, intellectually disabled. That is the conclusion of the claims that you've made. And obviously that's not true, which means that you haven't thought this through to its logical conclusion, because you know that the end is false.
Well,
which means that one of your starting premises must also be false, by the way.
Well, no, I mean, I'm where I say that if it was so so is your rationale for these discrepancies environment, if that's the case, or discrimination too, right? Is that your explanation for lower
Sorry,
IQ?
one more time.
In the United States, is your explanation for these differences in average IQ like racism?
I don't have an explanation for the average IQ.
Don't have an explanation.
No, I haven't studied this. This is not something that's particularly interesting to me.
Well, like I told you, man, this is blasphemy to the left. But because
do you think that the people who study this, like the academics who study this, are overwhelmingly right-wing or left-wing?
Left-wing.
Okay, so then if it's blasphemy, why would they study it?
Because they have to come to a conclusion other than what is reality. And the reality is,
who should be trusted to determine what is reality here?
Well, this is postmodernism. This is what we're getting into.
Ah, so you are the sole arbiter of what is reality now?
If you're asking me what reality is, I would say that reality is just something that we can just be common sense logic that we can all collectively agree on, which we all pretty much did until about 15 years ago. Okay. We're postmodern.
Was it the fluorine in the water?
No, it was these ideas of postmodern. Do you know what postmodernism is? I'm assuming you do.
It's a movement that's been the boogeyman of the right wing for like 50 years.
And you know what the Frankfurt School is, I'm assuming?
I'm mildly familiar with it, yeah.
Okay, well, I can tell you about these things if you but what this has done is it's created this, we could call it, I guess Elon would say, the woke mind virus of the you think that men can become women, and you think that race is a fantasy, and it's just, these ideas are crazy, Dr. Blitz. And
is it interesting to you? So just to be clear, do you think that IQ is generally genetic, right? More genetic than it is environmental.
I think it's about, just in general, I think it's about 60-40. 60% 40% environment.
Right. So now, would you say then that it's your parents' fault that you have these views? Because apparently, people who describe black people as lazy, or people who describe black people as unintelligent, are more likely to do poorly on IQ tests. So is this your parents' fault that you're this way, or is it like, the environment's fault?
That I'm what way?
That you're the kind of person who would describe black people as unintelligent.
Look, there are smart black people, individual. I'm just talking about on a macro, large picture.
On a macro level, you're saying that black people are unintelligent. I understand what you're saying. And it also seems that people who make that claim tend to be more unintelligent themselves.
Well,
so would it be that your parents' fault that you're this way, or the environment's fault?
I don't think it's a fault.
Well, I mean, so generally speaking, we would say that it's, the fault of the parents if there's genetics, not necessarily like that they're like morally responsible, but that the genetics come from the parents, of course. And so if IQ is primarily genetic, then it would come from the parents. It would be the parents' fault that your IQ is on the lower end of these things, lower end of this side. At least on average. I can't say anything about you specifically, but people who make claims like yours tend to have lower IQ.
Look, I mean, if it makes you feel better.
No, I mean, this is like empirically demonstrated by, there was a study conducted in 2016 that examined this exact question.
All right, man. All I can tell you is when we talk about this, as I was trying to mention, this is the problem with third world immigration.
So should we also not let the racists come in? Should we maybe kick the racists out? Because they have lower IQ. Well, okay, instead of saying racist, let's just say, should we kick out all of the people who say that black people on average have lower IQ?
Even if it's true?
Yeah, suppose that it's true. Should we kick these people out too because they also tend to have lower IQ? The people who make these claims?
So you want to kick people out who think that there's average differences. Look, why?
Look, it's just look. So I'm not saying that there's anything true or false about their claims. What I'm saying is that the people who make the claim that black people are unintelligent are more likely to have lower IQ, and so we can just use that as a proxy because people who say that black people are unintelligent tend to out themselves pretty frequently, and not everybody's taken an IQ test. So if we want to kick out people who have lower IQ, one way to do that would just be to kick out the people who say that black people are unintelligent.
Okay, I don't know where this is. You want to throw people out. Is it okay?
Well, you don't want to let people in who you think have lower IQ, right?
No, Dr. Blitz, there's an essay crisis in Western Europe, and we would have had these problems here in the United States to an even larger degree if President Trump hadn't have stopped it, okay?
Okay, I'm sure, but it seems like a big pivot. The point is you don't want to let people in
because... Not a big pivot.
You don't want to let certain people in because on average your view is that they have lower IQ. And okay, fine, let's take that to the logical conclusion. We should also then kick out people who on average have lower IQ, right? Or would you say that no, the people who have lower IQ who are already here, they can stay?
Well, what people are, that would be like me saying that I don't want to kick Africans out of Africa. That's their
That
home.
Seems like it doesn't address my point. I was talking about the United States. I assumed you were too.
It's a lot different of who you bring in as opposed to who you kick out. Because if you have an immigration system, you want it to enhance your society, right? And what did we see in Minneapolis?
So the lower IQ people who are already here. So should the Native Americans have kicked out the lower IQ Europeans when they came over? Should they have not let them in? You know, in an alternative world, should this have been the case?
They couldn't kick them out.
In an alternative world where this was possible, should this have been the case?
Well, in an alternative world, okay, man. I look, the Native Americans. I'm not condoning what happened to Native Americans. It was a bad thing.
No, I'm just saying that, like, you know, the indigenous people of the Americas are descendants from East Asians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 500 plus years ago, if we could have taken IQ tests, presumably they would have had higher IQs than those from Western Europe. So they shouldn't have let the Europeans in, right?
They couldn't stop them, Dr. Blitz.
I'm giving you a hypothetical.
What conquering and colonization?
I'm giving you a hypothetical.
Giving me a hypothetical.
I'm asking you to put yourself in a situation that the world is not, and consider what should or should not have happened.
Should the Native Americans not have let in the white Europeans?
Yeah, on the same grounds that you're suggesting that we in America don't let in people from sub-Saharan Africa.
I guess from the Native American perspective, they probably are sorry that they did.
Well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking on the same grounds that they should not have let in the Europeans, given that Europeans on average would have lower IQ than the Native Americans would have.
They wouldn't have had lower IQs. That's not accurate.
They are descendants from East Asians, are they not?
Yeah, but
East Asians have higher IQs than Western Europeans, do they not?
The average IQ of Native Americans is in the 80s.
Has that been
something similar?
Actually, why do you think that is? How do you think that happened? Because, like, these are people who are descended from East Asians, right? And this is post Ice Age, or this is right at the end of the Ice Age, anyway.
Living in a tribal society probably has an effect on IQ development over time. You see, over time, the environment becomes biological. Are we in agreement on that?
I have no idea what that means.
It means that genetics is really, to a large degree, environment over time. Right?
Yeah, sure. That's true.
Okay.
To be clear, you understand that up until 2000-ish years ago, Most of Europe was tribal, right?
Yeah, I mean they villages and stuff. Yeah, that's probably fair to say. Yeah, like in Britain, they would paint themselves blue and whatnot.
Yeah, so I thought that tribal stuff would result in lower IQ. Tribal living.
But the push toward industrialization is going to have an effect.
So are you suggesting that the IQ of Western Europeans would have been roughly identical to the IQ of the indigenous of North America or of the Americas up until the Romans conquered the peoples of Western Europe and brought civilization to them, and over the last 1,000 years or so, 1,500 years or so, the Western European IQ has jumped 20 points on average? Is that your claim?
Pretty close, yeah. That's probably about right. I mean, maybe
that is that is quite the story that you're telling yourself to explain all of these seeming contradictions that pop up in your worldview.
Yeah, but when you control for, like, for example, we'll take height for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
which is largely environmental, by the way.
Well, if you control for nutrition, which in industrialized countries we do, the genetics is going to maximize, isn't it?
Yeah,
in other words, yeah.
This seems like it's unrelated though to the question, but go ahead.
Well, how is it unrelated? I mean, I'm giving, if we control for the environmental aspect of height,
mm-hmm.
right? Which would be proper nutrition in childhood, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Maybe neonatal stuff too, but
okay. Yeah. So basically, if there's adequate resources in terms of nutrition and proper natal care, then the genetics will maximize height. And some people are just going to be 5'5", and some people are going to be 6'3", right? So there's just going to be an innate. That's where the genetics takes over.
Sure. This seems unrelated though to the claim that we were making, or to what we were talking about before. So just to be clear, it seems like your claim is that if you had gone to Western Europe 2,000 years ago or so, the average IQ would have been 20 points lower than it was in, I guess 25 points lower, or maybe 20 points lower than it was in East Asia?
I'd probably say 10 to 15. Yeah, it's probably it would have been living in a tribe.
And is there any data that backs this up, that tribal living somehow lowers IQ?
I'm just guessing.
Oh, okay. That seems about right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, well, John, I would like to say it's been a delight talking to you, but it hasn't. So thanks for being here, I guess. He's guessing a lot, which checks out, considering that people who make the claim that black people are less likely to, or are more likely to be unintelligent, also tend to have lower IQ. So I shouldn't pick on him too much. He's just genetically predisposed to having lower IQ. That's all. Anyway, let's read some super chats. I'll do some hydration and then we can move on to our next guest. From Ryan Gasling with the 2 pounds, Dr. Blitz used patience. It was effective. Yeah, always be patient. Always. From JJ Masta with the 6 pounds, the IQ of the same person changes before and after education. It's not an innate, immutable race trait. So there are some, so one of the ideas is that there is some genetic component, perhaps a small genetic component, but there's some genetic component to IQ that is, that it's like the upper, like the maximum value for a given individual of their IQ is at least in some part determined by genetics. That there's at least some data that supports that from what I've heard. However, most people, unless they maximize their education, they maximize their nutrition, they maximize their neonatal care, etc., most people don't reach there because that's that person's biological maximum, if you will. Also, IQ isn't a particularly good measure. Like it tests certain things that are perhaps only culturally relevant or culturally meaningful for measuring intelligence in some places and not others. So from Empiricist with the $2, my dogs are going wild from all this whistling. Fair point. Yeah, he was doing that a lot. From Tim Davidson with the $5, racism is laziness. Take the time, get to know, then find a reason to hate them personally. There you go. There you go. From EB with the $2, WTF even is IQ? I don't get the obsession. So the whole obsession with IQ amongst racists is that they want to find some way that they can empirically show that like white people are somehow better than black people. That's really what it boils down to, right? From Lost in FRP with the 220 Turkish liras, a KSP question again. Have you played KSP with RP1 and or Principia mods? RP1 is for realism and Principia for n-body physics. I tried Principia a while ago. I haven't played KSP in a long time, but I tried Principia a while ago. It wasn't great when I tried it. It's probably been developed more in the future or since then, but it wasn't great when I tried it, and I never really got into RP1. From Lancelot Cockblocker of Galahad, great name, with the $5. Brothers have big lips and are dumb, and white people are smart and tough. Blah blah. Just say it already. Yep, that's what his argument boiled down to. From Gretchen with the $5. My super scientific opinion is that MAGA brains are about as smooth as koala brains. I promise I did the research. I can pull it up. That's funny. From Ryan Gasling with the £2, Dr. Blitz, Chef Blitz. From Sean with the $2, the average IQ of MAGA is potato. From Zach with the $10, the best defenders for the idea that MAGA is pro-science are people arguing that the left doesn't accept 18th century racial pseudoscience. Got it. This is approaching a Leopold II defense, right? That's what he was trying to do. He's like, yeah, so MAGA is pro-science and the left is anti-science because of insert something that would be unquestionably described as an 18th century worldview. From Ryan Gasling with the £5, with the £5, to engage in a debate in seemingly murky, unfamiliar territory, and then absolutely obliterating each of the claims is a Dr. Blitz masterstroke. It turns out, critically thinking, I mean, maybe he got something right, that Ashkenazi Jews just are smarter. Maybe he should have thought about that before he came up against me, I guess. From Derp Doppler with the $2, highly recommend Morrow et al. 2022 in AJHG. I'll check it out. Morrow 2022 AJHG. A scope. Okay, so I'll just pull this up just so everybody can see it because I don't know what this is. A scoping review of guidelines for the use of race, ethnicity, and ancestry reveals widespread consensus, but also points of ongoing disagreement. Okay, I'll take a look at it. I'm not going to read it right now, but I'll take a look at it. From Fears Interaction with the $2, MAGA minus racism plus misogyny equals empty set. There you go. Look, I didn't say it. From Nora Cora with the, I did say it. From Nora Cora with the $2, send MAGA to Siberia so they can evolve higher IQ. There you go. You just need the cold. From Jack Fetter with the $5, it was quite enjoyable to witness him realize his very assertion was also his demise. I plead the fifth, Your Honor. It turns out that a lot of people have studied IQ in correlations with various social and psychological phenomena. I didn't even know that there was I didn't even know in advance that there was a study that examined the relationship between racism and IQ. But like my giant mega wrinkly brain was like, there's gotta be one. And so just like a quick Google search popped one up from like 10 years ago, from 2016, which, that was 10 years ago. And like, it turns out my giant wrinkly brained IQ was good enough, the intuition was good enough to get me to completely destroy his worldview. From Lancelot again with the $5, Blitz spinning this kid on his finger like a basketball. Stop embarrassing yourself, stupid. Look, we can't blame him, we have to blame his parents. From Tim Bimbadil with the $2, John is a fucking donkey. Woo boy. From Simeon Urchin with the $2, bro definitely believes in phrenology. He probably majored in phrenology, honestly. Maybe in 1820. From Draconic Drizzt with the £2, are MAGA brains thicker than smooth peanut butter? Thicker, maybe. Smoother, maybe not. And from our last super chat with $5 from SJL, sports has nullified a physical superiority argument. They need the IQ argument. Yeah, there you go. That is the reality, right? All right, let us bring up our next guest. We have a bunch of guests in the guest box who are eager to convince me that indeed MAGA is not anti-science. Let's talk to, I think Miles has been here for quite a while actually. So let's talk to Miles. Miles, how's it going?
I can hear you.
I can. Miles, how's it going?
Hello, hello. Hi. Yeah, so I am strongly opposed to your position, but from the left, not from the right.
Okay, so it's your view that MAGA is not anti-science?
My view is that regardless of this debate that you're having, you're kind of cherry picking and narrowing your focus on this big political debate to frame it. And basically what you're doing, you're saying is MAGA has all these values, but you're only opposing the fact that they're anti-science. So you're not opposing, their immigration policy, at least not with your prompt. And so
yeah, so the discussion here is a descriptive claim, not a normative claim. So do you disagree with the descriptive claim that MAGA is anti-science?
I disagree with the premise.
So you do disagree that MAGA is anti-science?
Okay, here's what I would say. It's like the other guy said,
they will use science. Do you think that MAGA is pro-science or neutral in science or anti-science?
Okay, sure. They're neutral in science. They will use it for their benefit, and they'll suppress it.
You think that they're neutral in science? That's an interesting
take. Like that last guy, right? He was using science. He's MAGA. He's closet MAGA, right? Like I'll be honest, you're a closet conservative.
He wasn't using science, right? He couldn't actually provide any scientific
sources. What he thought was science. He doesn't know any better. He's uneducated. You have lots of privilege because you're extremely well educated. You have a liberal education. He has a conservative education, right? Extremely limited education.
So he wasn't using science. We can agree on that. I'm glad
he was using what he thought was science. He doesn't know any better.
That doesn't mean that he was actually using science just because he
thought he was using science.
Sure,
he believed he was using science.
Lots of people think that they're using science. That doesn't mean
he was using science as he understood it.
And
so people have different conceptions
and he understood it poorly.
He's exactly because he's a victim of this bigger system that you're not addressing.
Okay, that's
because
cool.
you paint him as the opposition.
So you don't think that MAGA has any relationship with pro-science or anti-science policy then?
They use it to their benefit. They're politicians. They're not scientists. You're a scientist. They're politicians. You're not a politician. You're not.
So I'm going to provide you a syllogism here. Maybe we can talk
about it. Say that again?
I'm going to provide you a syllogism. So premise one, if a movement reliably across multiple unrelated
scientific you're arguing domains, like it's science. This is not science.
Do you want to cut me off or do you want to hear the argument?
It's a weak premise, like you said with the last guy, right? Oh, you have this weak foundation.
Okay, so I'm going to read you the syllogism, so that way then we can actually make some progress.
You can read all you want, but I'm going to dismantle it later if you want to save you the time.
So I'm going to read you the argument here that I have written down elsewhere, and then we can address each point if you'd like. So premise one, if a movement reliably across multiple unrelated scientific domains discounts scientific consensus and elevates partisan/identity authorities over scientific institutions, then the best explanation is that the movement is anti-science. Premise two, if representative polling and behavior reliably shows certain political identifiers are substantially more likely to reject the relevant consensus claim in a given scientific domain, then it is reasonable to infer that those political identifiers reject or delegitimize mainstream scientific consensus about that domain. Premise three, if a movement, through leaders, policies, and institutions, repeatedly act to reduce the capacity and or independence of scientific institutions or politicizes scientific funding, then it undermines scientific institutions and means of producing knowledge. Premise four, we're almost there. There's only four premises here. Representative polling and behavior reliably shows that MAGA identifies as substantially more likely to reject the relevant consensus claim in a given scientific domain, and the MAGA movement repeatedly acts to reduce the capacity and or independence of scientific institutions or politicizes scientific funding. Conclusion, the best explanation for the MAGA movement's behavior and polling data is that the movement is anti-science. Now, which premise do you reject?
The premise that you're framing it as a bunch of premises, and then if I can't disprove these premises, then your point is right. Okay, maybe your single point is right, but it makes no difference. What?
I'm glad we agree. That the best explanation for the MAGA movement's behavior and
so
policy
that's what you want to do. You treat it like it's science. So I already agree with you on this stuff because I'm well educated like you, but are you trying to get people who already agree with you to say, oh, wow, he's so smart, he can write these statements that make him sound really smart and he can prove dumb people who have never received an education wrong? You seem upset
because I'm not having the conversation you want me to have?
Yeah, because I want to focus towards systemic solutions where we have a better future.
It is my prerogative to have the conversation that I want to have.
Exactly.
If you don't like it, you don't have to be here.
And that's why I'm saying
you're a closeted conservative.
And you're a
closeted conservative. That's
and
hilarious.
You're not sufficiently educated on politics to be talking about this stuff. You're well educated in science. Good for you. Stick to your domain.
That's great.
Because we are supporting your opposition by sowing division and creating polarity. And you don't understand what you're doing.
This is my domain. I'm making a descriptive claim about reality. It's hilarious that he's calling me a closeted conservative when I'm literally an avowed socialist, right? That's like a crazy claim, right? Like, I'm a socialist. Like, this is... like, I'm not even a liberal. But anyway, he just really, he really wanted to come up and cry because I wasn't talking about his specific pet project. So he's the kind of people that make socialists and leftists look bad, by the way. Just saying. Also, somebody said the nose ring tells me everything you need to know. This isn't a nose ring. This is an injury I got from a surgery 2 weeks ago. Like, this is an injury that, like, I didn't choose. It's not a nose ring. It's skin that was ripped off of my nose. So thanks for being a dick, I guess. Like, from Optimus Rhymes with the $2. Typical Hassan Piker fanboy. Yeah, plausibly. Yeah. And from Carrie Yost with the $5. I disagree with what you're about to say, Blitz. Yeah, he did. He did. He was very, very upset with what I was about to say, without actually letting me say it. Oh, wait a minute. Where's the... Sorry, I just want to make sure I have something pulled up, so then I can add it to my debate notes later. Okay, let's bring up our next guest. Let's talk to Candlebox. Candlebox, how's it going?
Hey.
Candlebox, you there?
Hello? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Candlebox. Would you call yourself MAGA?
Yeah.
Okay. Candlebox, I hope you don't mind. First of all, there's some background noise. Would you be able to move to somewhere slower or move to somewhere quieter or do something about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was asking you to do something. Like, could you, like, I don't know, are you driving right now? Are you currently in a wind tunnel?
I'm a passenger right now.
You're a passenger. Could you tell the driver to say hello?
Hello?
That sounded like you.
I just have a quick question. I don't know. It sounds like...
Gotta let him go.
Let's have a quick steam.
We gotta let him go. Bro just said hello. All right, let's talk to Oreg or Orem. Let's talk to Orem. That's his name. Orem, how's it going?
Oh, you are looking in?
Yeah, although you're pretty hard to understand.
Probably because I have I'm using AirPods, but it's fine.
Okay. So Orem, would you call yourself MAGA?
No.
Okay. Why'd you want to come up and talk then?
Oh, I was gonna ask something for like, what are you using like, crap. What are you using graphene and nano vate or whatever be good for a spacecraft?
What?
What are you using graphene and nanovate be good for a spacecraft?
I don't know. It's a random question. What? Nick, how's it going?
Hey, Dr. Blitz, nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Could
Nick,
you please bring me up?
Before we start, Nick, would you call yourself MAGA?
I would say I'm like centrist, but leaning towards right for sure.
Okay, and are you based in the United States?
I have like how do I explain this? I don't know how. I'm sorry, my first language is not English. I have like not citizenship, but something where I go to America and I also live in a different country. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. So
wait, one
so
second.
you would say that you are a centrist and you lean right?
Yeah, could you please bring me up with Discord? I'm already in the guest waiting list. I have a better mic quality as well there, if that's okay with you.
Okay, yeah, what's your name on Discord?
My name is Sectos, and I'm deafened currently. I'm in the guest waiting list.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course.
Wait, let me disconnect them. Here. Yeah, can you hear me, Blitz?
I can. Give me an audio check, will you?
Wait, sorry, let me turn off your stream on my phone. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can, and it seems like the audio seems like it's good volume as well. So,
yeah.
Great. Glad you're here, Nick. So Nick, you said that you would call yourself centrist. You're leaning right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I do have a few questions that I just want to ask before we get started. They're simple yes/no questions, or you can say that you're unsure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So would you say that if climate change exists, would you say that humans are the main cause of climate change?
Yeah, definitely. I believe in climate change.
Okay. Would you say that the vaccines that we typically administer to infants, these would be like the MMR, you'd say that these are safe and effective? Okay.
Yeah, they are.
And would you say that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
Yes, I can also mention I'm an atheist, so like.
Okay, look, I'm just trying to get polling data, not polling data perhaps, but okay. So you say that you're a centrist leaning right, and so would you say that MAGA is anti-science, pro-science, or is neutral?
Most people I talk to, essentially I would say neutral, because most people just generally have not looked into data, just make claims, but once they do, either they get mad or they sometimes do realize they're wrong and change their belief to an extent at least.
So, okay, so your view is that it's roughly neutral.
Yeah.
For some reason, you're fairly quiet on.
Oh, how about now?
You're quiet on yeah. Try again.
Yeah, is this better?
Hopefully. The audio looks like it's fine on TikTok. I can hear you all right, but okay, that is better. Yeah. Okay. If I could provide you with pieces of data, with policy proposals by MAGA, say MAGA leaders, that is best explained by those MAGA leaders being anti-science, would you change your view on this?
Yeah, probably. But I just wanted to debate on certain two topics, if that's okay with you. If not, then I think.
Well, I mean, the topic is broadly about MAGA being anti-science, and so it seems like.
And I would like.
So is there a particular point that you think is relevant for that conversation?
So there's two topics I'm really interested in would be like race and ethnicity you were talking about, and also trans issues. I'm okay with whichever you prefer.
Yeah, so as far as, I don't really care a whole lot about race and ethnicity, so that's why I don't really know a lot about it. I don't have the data to support it. But as far as the trans community and the trans identity is concerned, you would recognize that the majority of psychologists, the majority of neurologists, the majority of physicians agree that the trans identity is real and that gender is not something that is identical to sex, right?
Let me really quickly explain my view on it. We might not disagree. I mean, if we don't, I'm gonna just disconnect and I'm just gonna apologize for taking up your time.
That's fine.
So my view is that I am okay with transgender people. I think transition should be okay for anyone that wants to do it, except for underage people. That's where I might contend you on about, because I don't think underage kids should be able to transition at all.
So would it be your view that suppose, and here I'm just giving a hypothetical, suppose for a moment that the data came out, and indeed it was the case that, say, early teenager beginning transitions amongst early teenagers had long-term beneficial effects on those teenagers.
I know this study. I know that
I'm not saying that such a study exists. I'm just asking if the data was pointing in this direction, that transitioning, that a trans person transitioning, say, when they're 15 rather than when they're 18, would you say if that was beneficial, would you change your view that it's it's okay for a 15-year-old to begin a transition?
So I would update my view on the fact that it would be easier to transition for sure. But where I essentially struggle with is that I think, like, can I give you like premise argument essentially? I don't really have it written up, but if it's okay with you. So like it would be something like transitioning could be a life-changing decision. We don't wait. I'm sorry. I'm getting a call. Let me just answer for a second. I'm so sorry for this.
That's fine.
Could you give me 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Much.
I sometimes have to take calls in the middle just because things come up sometimes, so I totally understand it. I'm not going to hold it against them. In the meantime, we have some super chats to read. In particular, we actually have one. We won't read super chats, but we will acknowledge a Cash App from Jeremy with the $100. Thank you so much, Jeremy. The Cash App was sent for floor sweeping that last guest, and that was the guest that was obviously racist and obviously low IQ. Thank you so much, Jeremy. That is very, very generous of you, and I appreciate you. Support has ended for that. Okay, I don't know what that is. I'm just double checking some things while we're waiting. Do 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 do. Oh, is Miles still arguing in the comments? I'm surprised he's still here. Most people after they get kicked off are generally run away.
Sorry for the wait.
Welcome
I'm
back.
here. Sorry for the wait.
No, you're,
Yeah,
you're totally fine. So you're making an argument. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think transitioning is a life-changing event.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying it's life-changing.
Sure.
Then the premise two would be that the teenagers and kids do not have the capacity to make life-changing decisions. Like, for example, we don't allow kids to get, let's say, tattoos because it's really hard to remove them. Or let's say we don't give out driver's license to kids and really young teenagers because they might be putting themselves in danger.
Wait, we do give teenagers
well,
driver's
like
license.
16, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like 16. Yeah. No, I mean like 14 would be also considered teenager if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
For example. Yeah, that's what I mean. And I think that making such a life-changing decision, such transitioning, is not possible for someone who is underage. And for someone else to make a life-changing decision for you, I don't think that's right as well, because it would depend who it is, if they have right, essentially education. And yeah, that's essentially my argument. Sorry, it's not really well.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, are you familiar with rhinoplasties? You know what a rhinoplasty is?
Is it something with to do with the nose?
Yeah, it's plastic surgery to basically like make your nose cuter or make your nose.
Yeah.
So, at least in the United States, you can, if like as a teenager, as long as you have parental consent, you can get these. You can get these at like 15 or 16 years old. Would you say that should also be forbidden?
The thing I would say the difference is that rhinoplasty would only be visual change, right? While fully transitioning would not just be essentially phenotype change visually, but also hormonally changing yourself. And I think that's
so hormonal changes are much easier to reverse, and so they don't have to be permanent life-changing decisions, right?
I mean, I don't know how. I'm sorry. I know it's reversible. I don't know how easy it is to reverse, though.
I mean, it's like you should probably like if you were going to reverse it, if you were certain that you were going to reverse it, you'd probably be better off not doing it. But like as far as either blocking puberty goes or starting to transition and then detransitioning as far as hormones go, that's fairly straightforward. Right.
I see.
So at least if you stop early enough in the process, like if you go through an entire, like if you're a male and you go through an entirely female puberty, then like obviously your body will change in certain ways that you will have a hard time changing without perhaps surgery, like you'll grow breasts, for example. But like that's not the same as like some permanent thing that can't be undone.
Yeah, I'm just saying I know it's reversible, but it's like really hard, especially if you go through. It would depend on how long you're on the medication as well. Right?
Yeah, of course. So, there's
I think my view essentially is that when people become like 15, 16, I would say it should be normal that people get introduced to essentially the concept of transitioning, and then when they are 18, they should be able to if they want to. I think that's just my view, and I think young people transitioning, I still do not think it's okay. I understand it's reversible. I just
I guess my issue is that like we let life-changing things happen, and life-changing things happen to young people.
Yeah, of course.
As long as their parents consent, as long as if it's possible, if the child has been consented in their ability to do so. Obviously children can't consent fully, but they can at least say things like, oh yeah, I get that. And if the doctors think that it makes sense, we let these things happen all the time. So it just seems a little unusual that we're focusing specifically on the trans issue when we understand that there are good methods to make sure that mistakes aren't being made frequently. And that's by talking to parents and doctors and the child themselves and so on.
Yeah, okay, so let me ask you something like this. I don't know what's the terminology for this. Maybe you could tell me. The kids that are born with like both female and male organs, you know?
Sure,
I don't know what it's
we
called.
would just say it's intersex. Sure.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't know the terminology. So intersex people, do you think they should be able to make the decision of like essentially which gender to stay? I don't know if that's
Yeah, I mean,
normal to say.
so it's not
As
something I've
kid
thought
or
about a
when
lot.
they're adults.
It's not something I've thought about a lot, but I think that they should be able to make those decisions. Like, I think that having the doctor make the decision for an infant right away, unless it actually causes medical problems, I think that having the doctor make that decision is probably wrong. It's probably not.
Yeah, I
not,
would
like,
agree with that. I
ethical.
think, yeah.
But the point is that, like, you know, I could imagine that, like, the doctor, because I could imagine, and again, I'm not a physician, so like maybe this is just not the case, but I could imagine that if there are going to be issues, those issues will develop at puberty, where usually sexual dimorphism takes place. So, you know, if it were the case that a doctor and the parents and the child themselves came to a agreement about what they wanted to do before the child went through puberty. This is an intersex child who might develop medical issues if they went through puberty without any sort of intervention. Then I think it would be reasonable to say that that child in combination with their parent and with their doctor could make a decision about what to do before they went through puberty. I think that seems reasonable, right?
But to an extent, of course it does to an extent. I also agree with the transitioning too, but you would not disagree, I hope, with the fact that there are people who have transitioned at an early age and regretted it, right?
Of course, like, yeah. But I mean, like, people also get hip replacements and regret that too. So if it's the case that the frequency of regret is particularly high, then that's probably something that we should investigate and look into, and then perhaps adjust accordingly. But if the regret rate is not particularly high, or if it's still fairly low, if it's lower or comparable to other procedures, then it just seems like it's probably not any more problematic than any other kind of procedure that a child might have.
Yeah. Do you have any studies that demonstrate what the percentage of regret is in people who have transitioned in early age?
I don't know. I might have them offhand, or I might have them on hand, but I'd have to go look. I don't think I have any offhand. I could go find some for you. And look, so my position is basically, if it's the case that, and I'm not making a normative claim here. Yeah. I'm saying that if it's the case that the regret rates are fairly low, and from what I'm hearing, they are fairly low, apparently. So chat is saying 1 to 3%. We'd have to go find the data that supports that. But suppose that that's the case. If the regret rate is fairly low, then it just seems that we should treat it the same way that we treat other kind of procedures that have low levels of regret.
I agree.
And so we should use that to inform our views. We shouldn't just say, well, they're a child, so they can't do it, period, full stop. We should inform our views based on the scientific evidence that's available.
Yeah, I see. I had okay, so let me ask you something like this.
But to be clear, that's not the view of MAGA, to be clear. The view of MAGA is that this shouldn't be allowed, period.
That's why I say when I'm more central, but leaning towards right. Like, just to make it clear for just a second, okay? Like, when I mean that, when I'm saying that, I'm saying, like, okay, for example, Trump did good thing with releasing the Epstein files, but did it extremely wrongly and illegally, essentially.
So, but it looks like you're not disagreeing with me that MAGA is anti-science.
The
because that is the topic. That is the primary topic here.
Yeah, but you know, like, at least people I speak within MAGA, and I have a lot of people around me that are like that. They do not have as radical views as, for example, your last guy you had on stream, right?
Sure.
So yeah, that's why maybe I have a wrong conception as well on how MAGA really is.
So there's kind of two pieces here. The first is that, and this is just the kind of, these are the two pieces of evidence that I kind of use to come to this conclusion, which is primarily that on the one hand, if you take polling data of people who call themselves MAGA, even separately from calling themselves Republicans, there's some polling data that talks about just people who call themselves MAGA, they're more likely to reject scientific consensus on things. They're more likely to reject evolution. They're more likely to reject climate change. They're more likely, obviously more likely to reject the scientific understanding of gender, like this, the sociological and the psychological understanding of gender. They're more likely to reject medical consensus with regards to, how vaccines work and things like this. So overwhelmingly, people who call themselves MAGA are more likely to reject scientific consensus. And then furthermore, MAGA, people that we would call MAGA leaders or MAGA politicians or, MAGA influencers, these people are more likely to propose policies that would have negative effects on our scientific institutions or scientific research in the United States. And so while it might be true that a given individual might be might be happy to accept some piece of data and then change their worldview accordingly, the polling data just seems to not bear that out.
Yeah, that could totally be right, and I might have wrong conception of MAGA. I can't really disagree with that. But can I ask you something else about the trans issue, if that's okay?
I think I only have like another hour and 15 minutes or so for the stream.
Just
and then
one
I gotta
question.
run. So I think
like,
okay, as long as it's quick, then sure.
Yeah, it's really quick. So we like your view is that it's okay to transition at a teenager when they're teenager, except because it has a lot of benefits. But like, what age should it be? Like, if a 5-year-old says, "I want to be a girl," right, or something like that, I don't think it's easily. So
to be clear,
can't really take that. But
my view is
be, no?
My view is generally pretty gray. I'm not. Yeah. I don't have a particularly strong view. I think that like once somebody is a teenager, like 16 or something, I think that saying that they shouldn't be able to, especially with parental and doctor consent, saying that they shouldn't be able to begin a transition, I think that that's a little bit silly, because like the age of consent in the United States and a lot of states is 16 already anyway. But as far as what should be done for young children, I'm a lot more agnostic about that. My view is generally like you don't even like if you're transitioning, like if a child is transitioning, like somebody who's like 5, 6, 7, 8, if they're transitioning, there's no medical intervention that's involved there. It's just social transitioning anyway. And then as far as the efficaciousness or the how beneficial or how detrimental puberty blockers are, again, I'm pretty agnostic on it. I lean towards puberty blockers seemingly being okay because we already use them in other medical scenarios. And so like it seems like at least using puberty blockers is like it's pretty well studied. It seems like it's not unreasonable to allow that. I don't have particularly strong views though about like when hormonal therapy should be allowed to be began, just because I'm not the most well read on that particular topic. Okay. So like if it turns out that the data comes out that no, you really shouldn't start hormonal treatment until after you're 16 or something because the negative side effects strongly outweigh the positive benefit or the benefits, then I'll just change my view. I'm generally pretty agnostic about it. So
I see, understandable. Okay, pleasure talking with you, Blitz. Have
Likewise.
a great day.
Thank you for being here. Bye bye. All right, let's bring up our next guest. Let's read some super chats first. Then we will bring up our next guest. From Wheel Chapman with the $2, thank you so much. It's very, very appreciated. And from Joshua Everett with the $5, I love it when they think the opposite of a liberal education is a conservative education and not a bad education. Yeah, there you go. That is awkward, isn't it? From D Bizzle with the $5, quick, everyone get a nose ring. Keep the crazies away. Yeah, I just am not like I just wouldn't want a nose ring myself because I wouldn't want to have to experience that. And I don't think I'd look good with one. From D Bizzle again with the $5, also still waiting for my Dr. Blitz Jeopardy hum tracks to study to. Sorry. I should have done it, but From Bob the Monitor with the $10, the anti-trans attitude towards consent is so twisted. Children can be forced to undergo medical changes without their consent, infant intersex surgeries, but if they want it, it's forbidden. Gross. Yeah, it is kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, like, and to be clear, while it's not the case that like children can consent on their own, children can definitely like agree to something. Now, that's not enough to say that it should be allowed to happen to them, especially not without parental consent and doctor consent and so on and so forth. But like, you can talk to a 15-year-old and the 15-year-old can be like, can show signs of understanding. The 15-year-old can show signs of like, realizing what the consequences are. And then they can be like, okay, I'm okay with that, right? It's not to say that they like consent in the sense that we typically understand it, but like they can definitely think about things. They're not brain dead until they're 18. All right, let's bring up the next guest. From Salsicha. Salsicha, is that how we say the name? Salsicha, how's it going?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. Salsicha, would you consider yourself MAGA?
I would not. I'm coming from the left.
Okay, are we doing this again? Is the claim
well,
merely that you don't think that this is an important conversation to have?
No. I think it's an important conversation. I mean, I'll give you my thesis and you tell me if you want to debate it or not, I guess.
Okay, go ahead.
I think there's a problem on the left with scientism. It's largely performative. Like, not everybody who claims to represent or support science is representing actual science. They're representing some moral claim to being science sounding. And I think even scientific consensus can be captured by moneyed interests. So I don't think just falling back to, well, there's a majority of people that believe something that therefore it must be true. I don't think that's always a true statement.
Okay, so but that doesn't seem like it addresses the prompt here at all.
Yeah, I think it does, because the claim that MAGA is anti-science, somebody would have to be pro-science for somebody else to be anti-science, right?
No, that doesn't follow.
Why not?
You can have two groups of people, both of whom are against something.
But,
for example, neither MAGA nor the Democrats are anti-capitalist, right? They're both pro-capitalism. So it's not, so yeah. Even if I had a prompt that said MAGA is pro-capitalism, it wouldn't therefore imply that Democrats are anti-capitalist.
But there are people on the left who are anti-capitalist. So sure. It is relative. It's a relative phrasing.
Sure, and there are people who are pro-science. Is your claim that there aren't people who are pro-science? Because I'm not making the claim that the left is pro-science here.
But it has to be anti-science, you would have to be relative to something that is pro-science. And whatever that is, I'm not saying it's the Democrats.
Okay, so do you not think that there's anybody who's pro-science, like at all?
I think there is, the statement that someone is pro-science is, somebody who claims that as a characteristic is often performing a attribute of like science-ness, but they're not actually like, they're not actually able to like cite scientific papers and use scientific methods.
Okay,
like,
so would you say that I'm pro-science?
Well, you're a scientist. I think in your field, you absolutely know what you're talking about, and you're pro-science. Yes. So I don't think you're a biologist. So like,
so as far as trans issues are concerned, if I have an entire document filled with papers that I refer to on the regular, or if I'm talking about climate change and I have a document full of peer-reviewed papers that I refer to on the regular, that I'm just being performative. Is that the claim?
No, I don't think you're an expert. I think in 2024,
I don't have to be an expert in order to refer to scientific evidence, but go ahead.
Well, having a PhD should mean that you know what you're talking about most of the time.
I don't have to be an expert in order to make scientific claims, especially if they're sourced with peer-reviewed data.
Right, and I could make other claims. Like there's a paper in 2024 that shows that there's a 12-fold worse mental health outcome for people who transition. Like there was a court case recently in New York
litigate
where
it.
it was like there's lots of things I can, like I'm not an expert either, but like just saying I read a paper how is that science?
Well, this is why so the whole business of the scientific endeavor, and to be clear, this just seems like it's a tone policing thing that you wanted to come up and do, but I'll take the bait. The whole point of the scientific endeavor in the last 150 years or so relies on scientific consensus, because we understand that no one individual can be an expert on everything. And so the reason why the reason why it's good epistemology to trust the scientific consensus is because we understand that if you take a large group of people who are experts on a thing, and then you find the things that they overwhelmingly agree with, that thing is most likely to be true. And you can rely on that as a way of forming positions, even if you don't have the expertise to evaluate their claims. That's just a good kind of epistemology that you can do. And so when somebody says that they're being, like when I say that a group is being anti-science, what I mean is that that ideology is specifically tends to contradict the scientific consensuses and the institutions that help develop those scientific consensuses. Consensuses. So that's the claim being made here. Now, if you want to claim that being pro-science in the sense that you support the scientific institutions that develop scientific consensus, and you tend to use the epistemology where you agree with scientific consensus unless you have expertise in that field, if you think that that's not actually real pro-science, then that's just a disagreement in terms. But that's what I'm using the term to mean.
I think institution is the right word here. What do you do when you no longer trust an institution? Like, are you anti-science because you think an institution has failed?
So I guess it would depend on the institution. Like if you think that like
a scientific institution.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think that all scientific institutions or some large quantity of them have, then yeah, that would be a pretty anti-scientific view in my view.
But then aren't you assuming that it's impossible for a scientific institution to fail?
I'm just doing good epistemology, right? I'm just taking the view that it is more likely that some person who thinks that all of these institutions are, not trustworthy, that person is just more likely to be not interested in, you know, furthering the scientific endeavor than it is the case that it happens to be that literally all of these institutions have been compromised.
I don't think MAGA. I haven't heard MAGA make the claim that all scientific institutions are
I said
failed.
all of these, but to be clear,
I think they're very particular about like the medical industry, which seems to have ethical issues. Like if somebody is criticizing the medical industry, that should be a valid criticism, right?
So the industries and institutions are different. The point that I make, and the point that I tend to bring up, is that if you go look at basically any of the federal agencies, any of the national agencies that are a big part of their work is engaging in scientific research, you can go look at basically all of them, and almost all of them will have their budget proposed to be cut next year. Almost all of them. In fact, even the Department of War's research and development budget, so you can go look at least for 2026, you could go look at the proposed budget and you could go see how it was changing from 2025 to 2026, and you could go, and it would break down by like, you know, sub-department and sub-sub-department and all of this, and you would go find that even in the Department of War, which was getting a huge budget boost in 2026, even their science and research department was getting a cut, even in the Department of War. And so what you'll find is that, well, if they are proposing cuts to basically every single scientific organization that is federally cuttable, that seems like it's not just a coincidence. It seems like they're not saying, oh, well, it seems like the good and rational view to hold is that they are not interested in furthering the scientific endeavor, right? That's the view. That's the position that I'm proposing.
Is that
here.
a MAGA position that all, is MAGA doing that?
Well, it was proposed by Trump, who is the head of MAGA.
He's the head of MAGA.
Well, it was proposed by the Trump administration, which is the head of MAGA, of course.
If the war in Iran goes badly, I think he may no longer be the head of MAGA.
Maybe we'll see.
We'll see about that.
Look, it seems like you want to have a like this is a semantic dispute rather than a substantive one, so I'm gonna let you go. But thank you for being here.
Okay.
If you want to come at it from the left and you want to talk about how the left is actually anti-science, like this isn't the place for that, right? Let's talk to I think we've spoken with Angry Long Island veteran before. Let me just double check. I think we've spoken with him before, like a long time ago. Let's talk to Big Al. Big Al, how's it going? Big Al, you there? Big Al? Big Al, all right, Big Al is not here. Sorry for the clearing my throat. Let's read some super chats and we'll bring up a guest from Discord because we have a few. We have from Game Master Flash with the $10. Most MAGA I talk to focus on the what, but not the why. 1 to 3% of people who transition regret. But why? Failure of the community to accept their change is a major factor, and that's a MAGA position. That's a good point. From Bob the Monitor with the $10, callers misrepresenting the 12-fold number. The depression rate is 12-fold times higher among trans people than cis people. Says nothing about trans people transitioning versus not. Yeah, I kind of suspected as much, but it wasn't really relevant to the conversation we were having. From Glam Pixie with the $5, trans people have to become experts on science regarding trans care because we constantly have to defend our right to exist. Yeah, it's an annoying feature of the world, isn't it? And it's strange to say that that's even required, it's even required for people who are ostensibly on the left, right? It's very, very weird. From Kevin Capizzi with the $5, MAGA opposes science when it goes against their religion or it inconveniences them. It's that simple. Love you, Dr. Blitz. That is basically it. And I take it that that is an anti-scientific view, right? From Jack Fetter with the $5. I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess a Venn diagram of flirfs who are also MAGA are 2 overlapping circles. The overlap is extreme, but I have met at least one person who is on the left who is also a flat earther. These tend to be people who just distrust the government to the extreme, but are also like socialists or like, you know, these often are people who distrust the West, I should say. But it's neither here nor there. All right, let's bring up a guest. Let's bring up Glockenschmiel. Glockenschmiel, you're on. Glockenschmiel, you gotta unmute yourself, by the way.
Sorry, I'm here.
Glad to hear it.
Step outside so I'm not bothering the people around me. Apologies.
Sure thing. Glockenschmiel, would you call yourself MAGA?
I would.
Okay, and I just have a few questions just because I want to, this is for my own interest. I'm just taking like information, collecting a survey basically. So you would call yourself MAGA. If climate change is real, first, do you think climate change is real? And if yes, do you think that humans are the main cause?
I will say that I don't know enough about it, but what I will say is I think that certainly humans could be heating up the Earth. And I think if it is heating it up, it is probably our fault. I would agree on climate change.
Okay. Do you think that the vaccines that we typically administer to infants, these are like the MMR vaccine and I think Tdap, do you think that these vaccines are typically safe and effective?
Yes, I do. The only vaccines that I struggle with are the COVID vaccines.
Okay. And do you think that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
Yes and no. I'm a Christian, so I have to. I do believe that, but then I have to reconcile that with my religious worldview.
So if I put down unsure, would that be an adequate or an accurate description of your view?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I would say for the most part, I think there's a significant amount of evidence to support evolution. And I would not discredit that.
Okay, great. So that's helpful. It's not like coloring anything. I'm just interested in answering those questions. So you came up because it sounds like you want to disagree, or you do disagree that MAGA is anti-science. Is that correct?
Yes. So to clarify my viewpoint, I feel that it's somewhat. Let me try to find my words here. I think it's kind of a gross generalization of an entire group. Mm-hmm. I do think that certainly the case that can be made that there are individuals who claim to be MAGA, and there may be some positions that are typically upheld as MAGA that could be viewed as anti-science. But I don't think that permits the general statement of MAGA as anti-science, right? So, just the same way as I would believe that there are many viewpoints or individuals on the left that would consider themselves anti-science or would be viewed as anti-science.
So, in your view, and let me just clarify what I mean by anti-science. What I mean is that as far as a political movement is concerned, so surely you would agree that MAGA is a political movement, right?
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Okay, so I would say that a political movement is anti-science if it meets, say, one or more of the one or two of these criteria. First, if it systematically rejects or delegitimizes mainstream scientific consensus across different domains, or it undermines those institutions and procedures that produce scientific knowledge. Would that be a fair definition of what it means for a movement to be anti-science?
I could agree with that.
So it just seems then, given that definition, it just is the case that the MAGA movement, as led by Donald Trump and his administration, and as, trumpeted, that's not the right word, as championed, champion's not the right word anyway, either, as upheld by people who call themselves MAGA, it just seems that this is the case. And the reason I say that is because you can take separate polling data of people who call themselves MAGA specifically, compared with people who call themselves Republicans or Democrats or whatever. And what you find is that across at least two different domains, the people who call themselves MAGA are more likely to reject the mainstream scientific consensus on, say, evolution, for example, on, say, the effectiveness of certain kinds of vaccines. And that's a little, and on, say, whether or not climate change is real. Like if you poll Republicans and compare them, if you poll Republicans who don't call themselves MAGA and compare them with Republicans who do call themselves MAGA, the MAGA Republicans are more likely to think that climate change is either not happening or it's not a big deal. And that's a little strange, right? So that would meet the first criteria. And then the second criteria is easy to see, because for the last 2 years, every time Donald Trump's administration has proposed a budget, that budget has included cutting all of our scientific institutions with almost no exception, the National Science Foundation has typically had its proposed budget slashed by 50% or more for the last 2 years. And then we also have NIH cuts, and we have NASA cuts, and we have, let me pull up what the other cuts are, because there's the research and development portion of the Department of War cuts to the Department of Agriculture, specifically in their research, in their parts of their research where they are involved with climate research. So we're seeing huge cuts, proposed cuts, across the board for basically all scientific institutions. So it seems like it meets both criteria.
So I admittedly haven't seen too much of the budget, so I will trust your word.
I can pull it up for you if you want, by the way.
Oh, I mean, feel free if you like. But what I would say is I can agree on some level that significant cutting of resources for scientific institutions is an issue. But I would say that it's only necessarily anti-science if other unrelated institutions are not also receiving budget cuts.
Well, the Department of War is getting a huge budget increase, right?
Well, I mean, we have the largest military budget on the entire planet.
And so why is it going up even more?
Because we're in war. Because we're at wartime.
Well, we didn't have to be.
As Trump would like to say, a military operation. But I mean, I'll just ask you. I mean, have other non-scientifically related governmental institutions, are they also receiving significant budget cuts?
Not necessarily. The Department of Justice, for example, here is getting a 13% increase. The Department of Veterans Affairs is getting a 8.7% increase. The Department of Transportation is getting a 6.2% increase. The Department of that was the Department of Justice. The National Nuclear Security Administration is getting the Department of Energy is getting this is very hard to see. Yeah, the Department of Energy is getting a 2% increase. In particular, most of it's coming from the National Nuclear Security Administration. It's getting a 12.4% increase. The Department of War is getting a 43% increase. So, I mean, there are other departments that are getting budget increases, or if they're getting budget decreases, they're like tiny budget decreases, like 3% for the Homeland Security, for example, or like 3% for the Department of Education. But if you go look at like the National Science Foundation, that's a 54% budget cut. The EPA, 52% budget cut. If you go look at NASA's getting like a 25% budget cut or something like this. And the science wing of NASA is getting a huge budget cut as well. He left, didn't he? Yeah, he left.
No, I didn't leave.
Oh, you didn't leave? Where are you?
didn't.
Wait, why can't? Oh, you're on Discord. That's right. Okay. So this is to say that the kind of the core scientific institutions that we have in the U.S. are getting budget cuts across the board, and other organizations are not.
You know what? I will say, I will agree with you that I believe it's an issue that and let me clarify my statement. If the reasoning for the budget cuts of the scientific institutions is, solely based off of, well, these are producing results that don't look good for us politically, then I would consider the budget cuts anti-science. But to assume wholly that the budget cuts are a result of solely political motivation, I think would be a little too quick. So now, of course, I don't know everything that goes into that, but I can't imagine that the budget cuts are solely because, well, this doesn't look good for us. But I can agree that cutting the budget to scientific institutions is an issue. I don't necessarily agree that cutting the budgets is specifically anti-science, because there's a lot that goes into making a federal.
But it's part of being anti-science. If you're undermining those institutions, we agreed that undermining those institutions is one of the parts of being anti-science, right? And by the way, let me just give you 2 examples. So would you say that science that produces research regarding climate change is politically inconvenient for the for MAGA?
I don't think it's necessarily politically inconvenient for MAGA. I think it's politically inconvenient for big oil and energy lobbyists.
Okay, and would you say that MAGA is generally pro-oil? Pro-oil,
MAGA is generally pro-oil, but I would also say that, I mean, there's no real political party in the United States that's specifically anti-oil.
The Green Party is, by the way, I think. But
Green Party hardly
they hardly matter. But the point is that like surely we would agree that producing more evidence that climate change is real and that humans are causing it and that burning fossil fuels is causing it, producing more evidence or producing studies that show that would be contrary to the messaging from the president.
Well,
who famously said, by the way, that climate change is a hoax.
Yeah, and I think he's undereducated on the issue.
So let me give you 2 examples. So one is, this is from December of last year. This is from Reuters, by the way, so it's a fairly reputable, fairly neutral reporting agency. So we have a direct quote. So there was a move in December, and it's still ongoing. There's a lawsuit over it to shut down the National Center for Atmospheric Research, which is basically it's one of the largest kind of federal or national labs that investigates climate change, right? And Donald Trump's administration wants to shut it down. They want to delete it. And the reason why, according to Ross Vaught, who is the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, is because the facility is one of the largest sources of climate alarmism in the country. Meaning that because this research facility is outputting climate science that is alarming, they're shutting it down. And just in case you think that this is a one-off thing, here's another example. This is regard to a particular satellite that Trump wanted to shut down, and I believe it's actually been shut down, but this was from August of last year. There's a satellite that measures carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's its only job.
I'm actually aware of this, yeah.
Yeah, the orbiting carbon observatories. NASA, which the head of NASA, who was appointed by Trump, obviously, said that it was being terminated to, quote, align with the president's agenda and budget priorities, i.e., this was politically motivated to align with the president's agenda. Okay. So, like, this is a specific example of a scientific in this case instrument, a satellite that does climate change research, being shut down specifically to align with the president's agenda. So it seems like this is a specific example of the thing that you said would be anti-science.
I'm willing to agree with you. Absolutely. I wholly believe in the furtherance of human understanding.
I'm glad that we agree on that. I think that that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you know, whether or not it's politically negative to one side or the other, I wholly believe in the furtherance of human understanding. Now, that is a case where I can agree with you that there are certainly actions taken and beliefs held by the MAGA movement that can be anti-science, but I still think it's an unfair characterization to say the general statement, MAGA is anti-science, because that's not necessarily true.
So there are many. It seems like at this point we've established that the Trump administration has a history of and is currently doing the thing that we said was one of the 2 pieces of the definition of making a political movement anti-science, namely undermining institutions and procedures that produce that scientific knowledge. Donald Trump has, for politically motivated reasons, shut down, or at least sought to shut down, 2 institutions, or 2. So we have 1 institution and 1 scientific, device, scientific instrument that are politically inconvenient and produce scientific knowledge. So that's part B of the definition. Part A was whether or not the political movement rejects or delegitimizes mainstream scientific consensus across independent domains. And there's evidence of that too. All we have to do is just go look at the polling data. So it seems like both those criteria are met.
I feel that in order to characterize the movement as anti-science, though, there has to be a level of consistency. So if I could clarify my
sure, go ahead.
My definition, in that I think it is the consistent and how do I think about this? The consistent and non-prejudiced undermining of non-prejudice may not be the word, but undermining of an institution. I feel like there has to be a consistency, right? So in order for MAGA to be anti-science, MAGA would have to be anti-all science, not anti-specific pieces.
Oh,
right? So
I don't think that's quite right. I mean, consider this. Suppose that someone was not interested in scientific knowledge or the production of scientific knowledge as a thing in itself, but is happy to take advantage of any scientific knowledge that agrees with their motivations, agrees with their political worldview. I would still say that that person is anti-science, even if they're willing to accept some science because it agrees with their worldview. I would say being pro-science would be about accepting the scientific consensus regardless of whether it agrees with your worldview. And being anti-science would be only accepting the scientific consensus when it agrees with your worldview.
So let me give a hypothetical example.
Sure.
So say you have say you have two climate scientists, both went to the same school, both, have done the same studies, and they have two differing opinions. One climate scientist says, humans are destroying the earth and we're heating it up too fast, and one climate scientist says, well, it's not too big a deal. The person who says, well, it's not too big a deal, though they may be wrong, is not necessarily anti-science. They've formed their opinion based off of different observational data.
Right, but we're not talking about individuals here. We're talking about an entire movement. The whole point is that individual scientists can absolutely be wrong, and individual scientists should not be making definitive claims about something unless they can back them up with the scientific consensus. The point is if you reject scientific consensus, that's when it becomes, bad epistemology and, arguably anti-science.
Well, that would involve scientific consensus being total, right? So, I mean, there's no...
It doesn't have to be... Scientific consensus is not about 100%.
There are very few issues where there's a totality of scientific consensus.
I don't know what you mean by totality, but one of the closest examples we have is with regards to climate change, anthropogenic climate change in particular. It's somewhere between 97 and 99% of climate scientists agree that anthropogenic climate change is real.
Okay.
That's as close to. That is a consensus, right?
Yeah, I can agree. But what I mean by totality is every single, this is such an obvious truth that we all agree, and anyone who disagrees must simply be an idiot, right? For a long time, science wasn't.
That's not what science is about. That's not what scientific consensus is. Scientific consensus there can be consensus about very complicated things that unless you're an expert in the field, that you would have a hard time coming to a certain conclusion. That's why we rely on scientists to begin with, because scientists are the experts that can independently come to the correct conclusion from one another.
That doesn't necessarily mean that scientific consensus is always correct.
Nobody ever made that claim. But if you are not an expert and you're disregarding scientific consensus because it's politically inconvenient, I would say that that's anti-science. Now, you can say that maybe they should be anti-science. I'm not making a normative claim here. What I'm saying is that that's what anti-science is. It's what it means to be anti-science.
I understand your point there. I think we agree on a lot of the minor points here. I think my main issue is I think it's too general of a statement to say that the entire movement is anti-science. I think I think it's an unfair defining of the movement as just this thing.
Would you have said that the Nazi movement was anti-Jew?
Yeah, no.
Even though there were some Nazis who weren't anti-Jewish, and it wasn't the defining thing of them. They had a whole bunch of other stuff going on. They weren't just about being anti-Jewish. They were also about being anti-disability. They were also about being, pro-socialism for the ethnic Germans, right? So maybe it would be an unfair characterization to say that the whole Nazi movement is anti-Jewish. But obviously we agree that that's a silly statement.
But at the same time, we agree that it's a silly statement, but we can also agree that that statement is true.
No, I would not agree that the Nazi movement, I would not agree that it's true that the Nazi movement is not anti-Jewish. The Nazi movement was obviously anti-Jewish. They also just had a whole bunch of other stuff going on.
Your statement was that the whole of the Nazi movement wasn't all about anti-Jewish. And I said, and you said, that's a silly statement. But as you said, there were not, and listen, I'm not one to defend Nazis, all right?
I know. I painted you into a corner here, I know.
Yeah, but from from an almost semantical standpoint, it is a true statement, whether it's silly or not. As you said, yes.
So the claim,
not all Nazis were anti-Jew.
So when we say that Nazism is an anti-Jewish ideology, we don't mean that that's all Nazism is. We don't mean that there's not other features of Nazism, right? In the same way, when I say that MAGA is anti-science, what I'm not saying that the only characteristic that the MAGA ideology has is being anti-science. What I'm saying is that is one of the characteristics that the MAGA ideology has.
I can concede that in some areas MAGA is anti-science. That is what I'm willing to concede. I think it, like I said, I think a general statement that the movement as a whole is anti-science is untrue, because I mean there's a lot of MAGA opinions that are supported by scientific consensus.
Right, but you're doing the thing that I said that isn't pro-science, right? If you only accept scientific consensus on things that you already agreed with, that's not pro-science. That's anti-science. Right, like if, look, okay, I'll give the Nazi example again, just because it not to put too fine a point on it, but MAGA gets its movement, it gets its name from a similar era. So look, if there were, suppose that there were, Make America Great Again came from I believe it came from a fascist organization in the early 1900s in the United States, and I think it was based off of a German statement. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is to say, let's say that there were Nazis who were like, yeah, but that Jewish guy, he's a good one. We like him. He doesn't count, right? And so that and maybe the reason why they like that Jewish guy is because maybe even though he was born Jewish, he converted, and he's been participating in, maybe he's a member of the SS or something like this. Even though the Nazis might like that formerly Jewish guy, that guy who has Jewish blood, whatever that means, that doesn't mean that they're pro-Jewish, or that doesn't mean that they're not anti-Jewish just because they happen to like one Jew. In the same way, just because the MAGA movement happens to like some science because it agrees with their worldview, it doesn't mean that they're pro-science, and it doesn't mean that they're not anti-science.
I don't think it necessarily means that they, like I said, I mean, I can concede that that certain points and certain viewpoints that are held are anti-science. I disagree with the gross characterization. I understand your points of saying, well, that you're saying this is a part of it.
Okay, sorry, by the way, to cut you off, I just want to correct myself. Make America Great Again, that specific statement came from Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. But this,
Okay.
I was thinking of America First. America First was something that was used by, you know, like Nazis. That's what I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking of Make America Great Again. I just wanted to correct that. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry for cutting you off.
I would say that the name of your country of origin and first is too general of, you know, kind of a statement to attribute to one. You know, I can agree that, you know, well, maybe it originated in one place. But, you know, if somebody in Mexico says, Mexico first, you know, I'm not going to say that that came from fascism. You know, anybody of any country would say, my country first. Can we agree there?
Well, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that it's true that any country would say that. Like, it's just not. Anyway,
Well,
it's neither here nor there. The point is I guess the America First, like the idea of America First, I guess first came about in the United States by the America First Committee. And I guess that they were at least mildly affiliated with fascists. Like they were, you know, they were kind of aligned with the fascists that were popular in the 20s and 30s, especially in the United States. There was an organization, I guess they organized a Nazi sympathizing rally in 1939. So this is all to say, like, the America First movement, it doesn't have a great history, but that's neither here nor there. So
that's fair. I will say the device I'm calling you on is getting low battery, so I may die
That's
here
fine.
soon. So I will
call
end
it there
it
if you
with.
want.
Yeah, like I said, all I would say is, you know, I do agree with you that there are certain viewpoints that are held that may be anti-science, and that's
Okay.
what I would say. But
Well,
I think it was
fair
a great
enough.
conversation. Nice talking to you, brother.
Thanks for being here, Glockenschmiel. Take care. He was kind and normal, and I appreciate that about people. All right, let's read some super chats, and then we'll bring on our next guest. From Kelly Share with the $10. I usually do not enjoy MAGA debate, but somehow I enjoy this bitter pill under Dr. Blitz's gentle, firm hand. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's probably in part because I'm not making normative claims, right? This is more of a descriptive claim that is perhaps it's a different style of debate than you'll typically get. From Christopher Sanford with the £10, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then I'm willing to say that there are certain actions it might take which could be construed as duck-like. However, I am loath to call it a duck. That's what it often boils down to. Yes, that's true. And from Boot Me with the $5, meanwhile, we progressives can abandon the politically convenient whole language method as soon as a study comes out showing it's worse than phonics. Yeah. I've actually, like, I heard about this on the grapevine that there's like some pushback, I guess, to go to like a what is it, like a phonics style of learning to read, which is cool if that's true. And from Chris Hansen versus Predator, that's funny, with the $2, MAGA is a natural progression of the Tea Party. It is. It very much is. Yeah, the Tea Party, like 2013 era Tea Party, I guess is where things started going this way, right? Maybe 2012. I guess that's when the Tea Party started, right? All right, let's talk to One Away Jones. One Away Jones, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. One Away Jones, would you call yourself MAGA?
No, I'm not even here to even talk about the prompt. I just wanted to tell you that the flat earth community was talking that trash.
They always talk mad trash.
I don't know, man. Like, I was trying to tell them, I was like, dude, like, even if somebody was, they said, well, they said you raged out. And I was like, well, you gotta understand, the scientific community, people laugh at you when you put this type of stuff out there and you have no evidence. Like I'm a Christian man. I know you don't really believe in the Christian faith, but I'm still a realist and I can still discern what is and what isn't real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just
well,
because
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I just wanted to jump up here and let you know, man.
Fair enough.
Maybe we should do that because there's obviously a lot of dumb out there for that.
I mean, look, I do that once a week. You can only do so much. But thanks for being here, One Away Jones.
Yep, no problem.
All right, let's talk to Mark. Mark. Lots of K's at the end of that name. Mark.
Yep.
How's it going?
Hello. I'm great. How are you?
Glad to hear it. Mark, would you call yourself MAGA?
Not really, but I do have relatives who are. I just wanted to talk about the statement that you made. MAGA is anti-science.
Yeah. So you're not MAGA. Do you think that MAGA is not anti-science?
The what's it called? The political, like the views that they've got. I definitely think the what do you call it? The policies are definitely anti-science.
Okay.
But what I disagree with is just the fact that you're generalizing MAGA as anti-science. Once you say that, you're generalizing it to almost everyone who voted.
Yes, that's
for
what
the party,
that's
right?
what a generalization is. Yeah. So the polling data, agrees with me that if you compare people who call themselves MAGA to people who don't call themselves MAGA, even if they call themselves Republicans, the people who call themselves MAGA are less likely to take seriously the scientific consensus, for example. So this is not a claim about every single MAGA voter rejects every single scientific consensus. But what is the case is that MAGA voters as a whole are far more likely to reject the scientific consensus than the other political populations that are present in the United States. And that seems like that is evidence of an anti-science ideology. But look, Mark, that isn't the topic of the conversation. Well, I mean it is, but you're not really here to disagree all that much. So I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to bring up a guest that we have from Discord because we have a few. But thank you for being here. Let's bring up C Cubed. C Cubed, how's it going?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. C Cubed, are you MAGA?
Sure.
I'll call you C3 instead of C Cubed because it's faster. You say sure, you don't sound so sure of that though.
Well, I would say recent events make it.
Okay, fair. Yeah, fair.
Odd.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put you as. Would you still call yourself a conservative?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put you as conservative. I'm just taking. It's not quite polling data. I'm just taking a simple survey. So would you mind answering 3 quick yes or no questions, and then we can talk about them afterwards?
Yeah.
So first, do you think that if climate change is real, first of all, do you think that climate change is real? And if so, do you think that humans are the main cause of it?
Yes to both.
Okay. Do you think that the vaccines that we typically administer to children, to infants really, are generally safe and effective?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now you came up because presumably you disagree that MAGA is anti-science. Is that your view?
That is my view.
Okay, so just that way then we make sure that we don't, we aren't talking past each other. Let me just tell you what I mean by anti-science. What I mean is something like the following, that we would say that a political movement is anti-science if it systematically rejects or delegitimizes mainstream scientific consensus across, at least 2 independent domains, and 2, it undermines the institutions and procedures that produce that scientific knowledge. Would you say that that's like a fair definition of what it means to be anti-science for a political movement?
I think that's a bit questionable of a definition.
Okay, which part do you not like? Because we can perhaps modify it into a way that's more amenable for you.
Well, I think it's because you said mainstream consensus, yes?
Yeah, mainstream scientific consensus. Yeah.
Well, I would say that it's questionable, the validity of mainstream consensus on certain issues like climate change, for example. What gets pushed to the mainstream is not always the truth, unfortunately, or can be greatly exaggerated.
So when you say, okay, so then what definition would you offer for anti-science behavior? How would you tell if a political movement is anti-science?
I would just say they reject the basic scientific method, I guess.
Well, so a political movement doesn't typically comment on the scientific method. That's usually reserved for conversations happening inside of a university. So would you say that it's just not? Would you say that it's just not possible for a political movement to be anti-science?
I would think it's an extreme position. Yes.
Really? Okay. So if you just as a
like to give you an example, do you know a certain? I don't know if it's the best example, but I guess it's like you'd have to be some sort of like literal full faith in like God and nothing else, and or some religion or something. Like
I don't know.
absolutely.
So
what I'm trying to say is that everybody trusts science to some level, right? Even throughout the ages when like, the world was mostly relying on religion, they still I wouldn't say they were anti-science, let's say, even in medieval times. I wouldn't say they were anti-science.
So perhaps I can give you a hypothetical, and then we can, to try to kind of illustrate my point here. Suppose that we have like a king in a medieval village or something like this, and that king issues an edict and says, all of the practice, all of the religious practices of that can be found in the Talmud are evil and are outlawed. We're going to outlaw all of the religious practices found in the Talmud, and because they're evil. And then that king also says, they have their propaganda rallies, they give their speeches, and the people of the village, who are mostly not Jewish, but there's still some, or of the city, let's say, mostly not Jewish, but there's still some Jewish people in it. The people in the city, or in the country or whatever, they start smashing up all of the rituals, or all of the ritual objects associated with Talmudic rituals and with Talmudic law, right?
Yep. Okay.
So like maybe there's some kind of object that's used in a ritual that's only described in the Talmud. Now, the Talmud, at least in the medieval era, was basically what was followed for what Jewish law was. So would you say that this king and this society, they have an anti-Jewish ideology? If this were the case? Okay, but they never actually explicitly say that they're against Jewish people. They just say that they're against this specific thing that Jewish people do.
Right, okay.
So it seems like under your definition of anti-science, if we extend that definition to anti-Jewish in a similar way, it seems like you would be forced to conclude that this society isn't anti-Jewish because they're not explicitly against Jewish people.
It's against Judaism, that's for sure.
It's only against Talmudic practices, right? It's not against it's not against Jewish people.
It is not against Jewish people.
So you would say that such a society is not an anti-Jewish society?
I mean, it's a situation where, being Jewish can be both practicing and non-practicing. But, I get what you're saying, though, with bringing it back to science. You're basically saying, oh, well, MAGA is doing all these things that are, I'm guessing in your view, because I was hearing the debates before, you were saying, oh, well, they're anti-science because they cut these policies, or they. So I'm like, okay, I got where you're coming from.
They do all of, like, it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, but because it doesn't say that it is a duck, it sounds like it's therefore not a duck in your worldview.
No, I don't think that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, to bring it back a bit to what I was saying earlier about the mainstream. Okay, I want to give you an example. That's okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, you know who Carl Sagan is?
Yeah.
So that man proposed an idea about nuclear war that would bring nuclear winter at the time. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the idea.
Yeah, well, that idea was pushed to the mainstream. And although you could say that, like, oh, well, it did a lot of propaganda to tell people, oh, well, nuclear war is really bad and shouldn't happen, whatever. It was ultimately false at the time. And even scientists, struggled to fight that view because it wasn't confirmed.
Wait a minute. So to be clear, it doesn't sound like we're talking about mainstream scientific consensus.
It is, because
what you're talking about is we're talking about a science communicator bringing up this idea. And then that idea enters that idea enters the mainstream, like, zeitgeist. That doesn't have anything to do with scientific consensus.
It has, unfortunately, because modern day science, like, I remember stuff like climate change, they were saying, oh, well, it's a huge issue.
But the example you gave was not an example of scientific consensus.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. MAGA opposes things like radical action against climate change. Right? That was one of the reasons.
Donald Trump called climate change a hoax. He doesn't think it's even real. We're not even talking about policy decisions. He didn't even think it was real.
Well, a hoax. It kind of was. I mean, people now were saying that the Earth was going to
a
burn
hoax
up.
means that it's fake, right?
And a lot of what they were saying was fake. A lot of
not what the scientists were saying. No, that wasn't the scientific consensus.
There was no scientific. There is no scientific consensus on
there
what the results of climate change are going to be. And
what the results of
climate change?
I mean, the scientific consensus is that the temperature will rise, right?
Yes.
And sea levels will rise as a consequence.
Yep. But the consequence, we're not sure exactly of what like the effect will be on. Because you got to think, they were saying farmland was going to become.
Who's they?
I forgot the exact word, but
who was saying this?
I think it was Bill Nye exactly. That was
okay. Is Bill Nye scientific consensus?
Bill Nye, well, he was in the mainstream, and when you look at countries like Germany, for example,
why are you leaving out the other word? The word in my definition was not just mainstream view; it was mainstream scientific consensus, meaning consensus amongst scientists.
Well, that's the thing, and I would say my guess it isn't anti-science because they're pointing out, hey, you know, a country like, let's say, the Democrats might say, well, we need to take action against climate change, and then MAGA would say, well, you know, a lot of the influencers you're bringing on, a lot of people are quoting things that are not scientific consensus, is just not. So why would we take radical action?
What is the case is that MAGA Republicans are far less likely to think that climate change is even anything to be concerned about compared to non-MAGA Republicans.
But that's not necessarily false.
I mean, it goes against the scientific consensus.
Well, that's not something to be concerned about? Not really. It says there are going to be consequences, but we don't know the scale of them.
Yeah, so if there are, so to be clear, the scientific consensus is that there will be significant consequences. And if there are consequences and we don't know about them, then yes, of course you should be concerned about them because you don't know what the consequences are.
Yeah, but that's not like, you know, exclusive to climate changes. I mean,
furthermore,
okay, go ahead.
The MAGA Republicans or Republicans in general are less likely to even think that climate change is real.
Sure, but that's a minority.
No, that's not a minority.
Amongst Republicans?
Yeah, it's not.
How do you know that?
I should say anthropogenic climate change, because a lot of Republicans will be like, oh, I believe the climate's changing, but humans have nothing to do with it. And that is also against the scientific consensus.
That is, but I don't believe that, like, most of MAGA is like, they don't believe in it. I do believe that, you know, they were like, well, the consequences that they're talking about are exaggerated, and I think that this political movement is using science, a non-existent scientific consensus, to push certain agendas and policies.
So just to be clear, MAGA and non-MAGA Republicans are most likely to attribute changing weather to natural patterns, right? So 52% of MAGA and non-MAGA Republicans total think that the climate change that we're experiencing has nothing to do with human contributions.
Okay.
So that is a majority. It's not a fringe amount.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess it's a situation where it depends what you mean by climate change. I'm not sure I want to go down there, but, you know, to further my point about, you know, this MAGA situation, the whole thing about, you know, climate change. What do you propose we do, for example? You get what I'm saying?
I'm not making any prescriptive claims about what we should do. The question is whether or not MAGA is even willing to accept the scientific consensus here that this is a thing that humans are causing. And it's not. 22% of Republicans. 22% of Republicans agree with the statement that the climate is the world's climate is changing mostly as a result of human activity. Only 22% of Republicans agree with that.
With that, I didn't want to say, but I just think these polls are kind of unreliable.
Okay, so where else do you suggest that we get our data?
Well, I mean, what agency did this poll?
This wasn't an agency.
Sorry,
it's not like some three-letter agency.
Language.
No. You want like the name of the organization?
Yeah, preferably. I mean,
so the organization is called Global Strategy Group.
That's fine, but I mean, you gotta understand these situations like polls. They're very unreliable, and I mean, the thing is, right?
That's a scientific claim. Do you have anything to back that up?
Yeah, I mean, polls vary widely, and often don't match expectation, like
So
the
if
elections, American elections, for example.
So if I go find more polls that all agree with each other, would you concede?
I would concede if they were like, you know, done. It would have to be like, I think, of sample size and stuff.
Yeah.
But
so
sure.
To be clear, have you taken a statistics class?
I have not.
So then, how are you going to criticize sample sizes?
I'm not criticizing sample sizes. What?
Okay, well, so I mean, you said it depends on the
do
sample
you mean
size.
like a study sample size, or like sample
of
sizes
like the
in
survey.
general?
So I just found another survey. This was a survey conducted of 401 Trump supporters, and only 49% believe that global warming is happening at all, according to this survey. I can go find another one if you want. This is like one of the most well-studied things, by the way. Like amongst recent political surveys is asking how, like, what percentage of a certain group is likely to think that climate change is happening. This is a very, very common survey. So there's tons of them that exist.
Sure, but I mean, I just can't agree with, like, because going back to the original claim, you say, well, they're anti-science.
Yep. Which, by the way, which you're exhibiting right now, by the way. You're like, the data is there, and then you'll be like, but is it really? You're being skeptical because it disagrees. It's inconvenient politically.
As you're saying, well, okay, it's real, and they're like, oh, well, they don't agree it's real. So it's like, okay, that's obviously an issue, and I would agree with you there. But the thing is, you got to realize that messaging around climate change has been really bad, right? People don't trust science anymore because of how politicized that's gotten lately.
No, specifically Republicans don't trust science anymore. Liberals and lefties tend to trust science the same as they have for the last 30 years.
Yeah, but these same liberals and lefties push, non-scientific consensus often.
Well, I mean,
right?
You can make that claim if you want.
Fact.
You can make that claim if you want, but it's not really relevant to the point that MAGA in particular and Republicans more generally are this is a recent change. Like in the last 30 years or so, this is a recent change that the right-wing side of the American political spectrum has dove off a cliff as far as science denial is concerned. This is a right-wing problem.
That is exclusive. Sorry, that's because, the left, I guess, often uses science as an argument when they don't have scientific consensus. Climate change, transgenderism are two big examples. So what happens is...
Oh, they do have scientific consensus on both of those, by the way.
On the consequences? No, they don't have on either.
Yeah, they do.
Based constantly right now.
I can provide you this. I can provide you the literal scientific consensus if you want.
Well, I don't know how that's possible right now. They're always changing rules of what a transgender person is, how they should be, called, what they cannot do.
Nothing's changed about that in like the last 15 years. What are you talking about?
As to how a transgender woman is defined, yes, it has changed a lot. Well, gender and sex differentiations
maybe since like the mid 2010s. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, mid 2010s. That was exactly when Republicans started. As you said, they dove off a cliff. Why? Because all this stuff.
Well, no, Republicans dove off a cliff a little bit earlier than that. They dove off a cliff in the 90s.
Okay, well, I would say that it's really bad right now, and I don't know about the 90s. I wasn't really born, but I know that.
To be clear, we're agreeing that Republicans are just like steeped in like science denial now.
The thing is, they don't hate science as much as they hate the opposition, right? They don't really care all that much about.
Well, they hate the science that disagrees with them politically. Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, that's my point. But the science,
and that's called being anti-science.
Is the issue?
If you're rejecting science,
there's consensus. There's not.
If you're rejecting science because it's politically inconvenient, that's just being anti-science.
No, I'm not rejecting science because it's convenient or inconvenient or whatever. I'm saying that a lot of groups, I would say Democrats, have used consensus where there's not. And again, going back to transgenderism, what I wanted to say is that the difference between gender and sex.
To be clear, I don't care about the cause. I mean, like, maybe it's an interesting thing to talk about, but like the cause of why MAGA is anti-science isn't super relevant. The point is that MAGA is anti-science. You can perhaps justify it and say, oh, well, they became anti-science because the left was using science wrong and blah, blah, blah. You can say that, but it still means that you agree with my statement, my descriptive statement that MAGA is anti-science.
They hate a very narrow part of science that just happens to be like very close, that is very closely aligned with, let's say leftist ideals, and they don't have scientific consensus. That's why they hate it. They're not actually anti-science. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, it's not very narrow at all. We have neuroscience, psychology, sociology, climate change or climate science, medical science. Like all of those branches of science are like in conflict with MAGA worldview, with the MAGA worldview.
Well, you're a physicist, right?
Mm-hmm. And by the way, just to be clear, the people who overwhelmingly think that physics is fake are also right-wing.
I don't think that physics are fake. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying that the people in the United States who overwhelmingly or who think that physics is fake or physics is fraudulent or physics can't be trusted, those people are overwhelmingly right-wing.
Fun trivia question, but anyway, when you talk about things like hard sciences, like being
biology,
physicist, like I don't think
medicine.
Well, biology when it comes to transgenderism is very questionable. I think you can agree with
the biologists disagree with you. It's not questionable.
It is. Okay, is a transgender woman a woman?
Yeah, I mean that's
okay.
Kind of by definition, transgender is an adjective. Woman is a noun.
Are they born a male?
Sure.
Okay, that's the issue though.
How is that the issue?
Because what other species has this quirk in biology?
Has what quirk? That gender and sex are different? Biologists agree that gender and sex are different.
They don't have as much consensus as you would think, I would say, but you got to think like.
I mean, like the American Psychiatric Association, the CDC, the Canadian Institute of Health Research, the World Health Organization, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. These are all the way that we evaluate what scientific consensus is in the absence of polls, because polls are often hard to come by, especially to determine what scientific consensus is that way. The way that we can evaluate it, a proxy that we can use to determine what scientific consensus is to see what is the prevailing view amongst institutions that represent that science. And the prevailing view is that gender and sex are different.
Well, across Western institutions, sure.
Sure. Do you have data that says otherwise elsewhere, from like Eastern or non-Western institutions?
Well, I know I think it's China. I don't think they recognize everywhere the difference. I don't think they do. I don't think there's consensus there.
Do they? Okay. Do you have like some I don't read Mandarin. Do you read Mandarin?
That's fine. But if there was
so like we could go check. We could go check to see like. Does the Chinese Psychiatric Association or something?
I think it might be on Wikipedia. Actually, there's like
do they make a statement?
Says, no, what I'm saying, right? There's a map, an article that was like, okay, here's the countries that recognize, a transgender woman as an actual woman. So they don't call it.
Well, to be clear, we're not talking about like legal recognition. We're talking about scientific recognition, right?
Well, the thing is, they often go hand in hand.
No, they don't. What are you talking about?
Well, for the left, they did, because the left's biggest argument was science, which is why the Republicans opposed it.
Right, and so currently, our current government doesn't agree with the like scientific institutions like the American Psychiatric Association distinguishing sex and gender. The current administration disagrees with that, so they don't go hand in hand, at least not necessarily.
Yeah, but just because they disagree with the institution.
Well, that's we're talking about scientific institutions here. We're not talking about legal organizations or like legal rulings.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Unfortunately, these things. I mean, you just said like, oh well, they don't recognize transgender people, even though science does. Which like they're linked. They're linked in this case. Yes.
No, they're not necessarily linked.
How
that's
are
my
they
point.
Not linked?
Because a political institution, for example, like the political governing body, the executive branch in the United States is controlled by the president and the president's cabinet. The executive branch doesn't have to agree with the scientific institutions.
They don't.
And in fact, in this case, they explicitly don't. In the United States, they are in direct contradiction with the scientific institutions.
Yeah, but that's not consensus everywhere.
Sorry?
That's not consensus, because the thing is,
I'm not talking about consensus here. What I'm saying is that the thing that we should probe to determine whether or not to determine what the scientific consensus is we should probe scientific institutions, not political, organizations.
Which institutions? The ones in America?
So I gave you an example of 5. The CDC, the American Psychiatric Association, the Canadian Institute of Health Research, the World Health Organization, and the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine.
Okay, and those are all institutions that agree with you.
Yes,
which is fine. But that's not scientific consensus. That's not scientific.
This is evidence of scientific consensus. This is evidence of scientific consensus.
I don't know if we can agree on this, because this is. I mean, it's a situation
then
where
you don't know what evidence is.
Well, it's almost exclusively a Western thing, though.
Yeah, well, I speak English and I don't know other languages, so I'm going to have a hard time
like,
looking at
what
what
other thing is like. Okay, do you think that like China would be like, oh no, we don't disagree with like this view of physics or any country, right? They wouldn't. But when it comes to stuff like transgenderism, obviously they do.
I could go get you the scientific consensus for climate change, and these would be strictly from English-speaking organizations. And you could say the same thing about that. You could be like, well, have you checked, the Egyptian Department of Climate? And I'm like, no, I haven't. I don't read Arabic. So
well,
like, yeah, the relevant consensus or the relevant data I'm going to be collecting is going to be English language data, because that's the language that I speak. Now, but it is still evidence for that consensus, even if it's not complete, say.
It's a uniquely, like, okay, let me put it this way, right? As in, you're a physicist. There's nowhere in the world where math is going to be like that, where a section of the world is going to agree.
It's hilarious you say that, because there's a specific example of the consensus in the rest of the world disagreeing with the view of Japanese mathematicians.
On what?
On the ABC conjecture, and whether, what was his name? There was a famous mathematician, Shinichi Mochizuki, who claimed to have had a proof of the ABC conjecture, and the rest of the mathematical community outside of Japan thinks that it's not a proof, whereas the mathematical community in Japan thinks that there is a proof.
Okay.
So this is an example, by the way, which you said that there is no example. You said that there is no other example of this, of finding consensus in one. Well, so then it's not. So I gave you an example of it not being unique, right?
Well, I would say these two are outliers, but these are not the same.
It's clearly not unique. It's clearly not unique, right?
Okay, maybe I'm using the wrong word here. The thing is, with the ABC conjecture, I don't know, necessarily what that is, but I know that like, it's probably not the same. Or I could Google it. Actually, I'm gonna do that just to make sure. But like the thing about, like I said, let's say transgenderism, or even like climate change. What action are they taking to like combat it necessarily in certain countries?
The actions are not the question of scientific consensus. Scientific consensus is not about normative claims, at least not typically. Scientific consensus is about descriptive claims, meaning how is the world? What way is the world actually like? Rather than what should we do about the world being a certain way? You seem to be confusing the two.
Okay. Well, like, this is, I didn't want to have debate on this, but like, this is like turning into gender debate more and more. Things like soft sciences, like, psychology and stuff like that is just, there's no way you can like, I don't understand how you can say there's consensus on the agreement that like gender and sex are like distinct when it's not, where all across biology, like I said, no other species shows this behavior.
No other species shows sociological organization the way we do.
That's
so like of course they're going to no, but I was explaining why no other species shows this kind of behavior. It's because humans are unique in a particular way, in that in particular we have societies. Right?
Okay.
Other animals don't have that. So of course we're going to have different features than other animals.
Well, therefore, if it's about let's say societies, as you said, it's not a biological issue. So you can't make a biological claim.
The biological claim is that there is this feature. There's this feature that humans have. There's this feature that humans have that is not the same as biological sex. A biologist could absolutely say that religion is not biology, for example.
Yeah, and societal issues like transgenderism are not biology.
Hold on. Societal issues like transgenderism or like gender?
Transgenderism.
Transgenderism isn't a societal issue.
It is.
I don't know what you mean by that.
It's not biological. It's not a. It's a.
You're right. It's not biology.
Issue.
It's sociological and psychological.
Exactly.
Gender is a sociological and psychological thing.
It's even, one could say, social construct now.
Yeah, I'm glad that we agree. So it's not biology. So biologists would be correct to say, yeah, this doesn't fall in my field of study. This isn't a biological thing. This is a different kind of thing. Falls outside of my my branch. Also, by the way, to be clear, gender does appear in at least gender seems to appear in some brain structures, which is in some sense biological.
Okay. Well, the thing is that you think this is a win, but the way I see it is like a lot of the time I hear, trans women are women, but they're not. Biologically, they are not.
Biologically, biology doesn't concern itself with what a woman is.
It concerns itself with gender.
No,
but it doesn't concern itself with
sex.
Transgenderism.
It concerns itself with sex. That's the distinction being made, and that's the distinction that biologists agree upon, that there is a distinction between sex and gender.
Okay, then if it's totally detached, then that's like gender or sex or whatever,
They're not
the
totally
thing that
detached, but they are
change.
separate things.
They are totally detached. They have to be.
They're related, but they're not the same thing.
Well, okay, sure. They're okay.
And
the thing is,
that's the scientific. By the way, that's what scientists, at least in the English-speaking world, agree on. Scientists agree that sex and gender are related, but not the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. But like that part of like, as you said, I think it's sex that can change, if I understand correctly.
No.
What's
sex and gender don't have to be aligned.
Okay. Whatever. Point is, I think it's gender then. Okay. That is not based in science. Yes?
It is. It's based in neuroscience. It's based in psychology, and it's based in
sociology.
sociology.
On a societal phenomenon. It cannot be based on science.
Do you think that sociology is not a science?
You can study societies, sure.
Yeah, so you can so it's a science, right?
The study of societies, yes.
Yes. So if it's a social phenomenon, then it can be based in science. It can be based in sociology.
Okay.
But furthermore, it's also based in psychology, psychiatry, and neurology.
Yeah, exactly. My point.
All of which are sciences.
It's not based on like anything mathematical or anything real. It's all studies of behavior.
Do you think
right? It's behavioral science. It's nothing to do with
is science. Behavioral science, importantly, is a kind of science.
Sure. But behavioral science can't make what other like study in science can say like, oh well, like stuff as I said, transgender women are women. It's like, well, you're saying that, but you're basing it on sociology,
which is a science.
Like what?
Yeah, sociology, psychology, psychiatry, neurology, all of which come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, they analyze behavior, but they don't.
And brain structure. By the way, neurologists don't analyze behavior; they analyze brain structure.
Okay, but maybe when you said psychiatrist, I was thinking about that. But like I said, none of these things can make statements like that.
Why not? They're sciences. They can make scientific statements.
Because they're pulling from biology, right? They're saying, well, actually, biologist, you can't call this man a man, even though he is. Because,
biologists don't do that. Biology concerns itself with sex.
Okay, but as you said, they're linked.
Yeah, as I said, they're related. They're not the same thing.
Yes. But the thing is, like, to be a transgender woman, you have to be a man in the first place, yes?
No.
See, that's the issue. Can you not see the problem? That has to be true.
No, it doesn't have to be true.
How come?
Well, because you can be a transgender woman who was a transgender girl.
Okay. But the biologist will say man at birth.
No, they would say male.
Okay, male at birth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come on now. Really?
Yeah. Male and man aren't the same thing.
And then you're saying, well, actually they're not. Why? Because this person says they're not, and there's a behavior among society that says they're not. That's not based on anything. That's just
It's
analyzing.
based on,
like,
wait, hold on. What do you mean it's not based on anything? It's based on sociology, psychology, psychiatry, and neurology.
Okay.
This is stuff that it's
Religion.
based on.
Religion,
These are sciences.
cults, faiths. All of these things can be based on sociology. That doesn't make their practices true.
Sociology can study religion
Yes.
in the same way that sociology
But
can
they can't
study
say, oh.
gender.
Yeah,
But the
they can't
point
say,
is that
Okay,
when
can I say
sociology
this real
studies
quick?
gender, the claims that sociology makes about gender are scientifically based.
Yeah, but as scientifically based as me being a sociologist, going to society, seeing like a group of people that say, "Oh, we're getting the word from God," and they're like, "Oh, well, there's a behavior that all these
Sociology
people are saying
can describe.
they're getting a word from God, therefore
Sociology
it is true."
can scientifically
No, you
describe the phenomenon of religion. Similarly,
And they can-
sociology
the
can
same way-
describe the
that-
phenomenon
apply
of
the same logic.
gender and
Yes,
and come to the conclusion that gender is a real feature of human society.
But as you said, sociologists, when they'll observe religion the same way as to observe this phenomenon, but they can't say it's true with either. That's
What do
not
you
their
mean
job.
they
They're
can't?
not-
What do you mean they can't say gender is true? Gender is a category.
No, that's not what I said. Just like the guy in
So they can study gender, they can study religion. In both cases,
Yes, but they can't-
religion really exists. Gender really
if
exists.
they see a behavior being repeated by a group of people, they can't go ahead and say, well, because all these people are like identifying this way, they can't say it's true. That doesn't make any sense.
They can't say what's true. They can't say it's true that they identify this way.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
They absolutely
say,
can
well,
say it's true that they identify this way by taking data and examining whether or not they identify that way.
The same way they can analyze people that say they get the word from God, and they get
and they can say it's true that they say that they get the word from God. Absolutely, they can say that both are true.
But they cannot say they get their word from God. They cannot say that's true, right?
Sure, in the same way that you can't ask a sociologist to determine whether somebody is what gender somebody is. To figure that out, you would have to I don't know, ask them.
Why? If you ask the religious guy, he's gonna say he gets his word from God.
So
it doesn't help anything.
The difference here, and maybe this is just going over your head, but the difference here is that the claim about religion, the religious claim, is that there's something external happening to influence whatever's going on in your head, right? That there's some God that is God that exists outside of your head that is communicating with you and giving you some sort of message. The claim of the claim of sociologists, and the claim about gender.
Well, you said external, could be internal, right?
Well, they think that God exists in their head and only in their head.
Well, they could say, well, a lot of religions say, well, when I get down and pray, I have a personal connection with God. This
right, and God doesn't exist in their head.
Me.
God doesn't exist in their head, right? God is not just part of them. God is a thing that's external to them. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is the question of gender is about their own identity, right? And so whether or not you can say that somebody identifies a certain way, the only way that you can determine whether or not they identify that way is by, asking them.
That doesn't tell you anything, because if you ask someone to identify themselves, they could just lie or say something they believe is true, but it is not.
How else are you going to figure out how somebody identifies?
It depends as what. If it's something like gender, you can.
How do you determine how somebody identifies? How do you identify how somebody identifies? And actually, who is the arbiter?
Just identify?
Who is the arbiter of who is correct about the identity of somebody?
Well, if you can base it in hard science, then hard science.
So when we're talking about somebody's identity, what's the hard science for somebody's identity?
Genes.
Genes doesn't determine somebody's identity.
Well, gender identity or sex identity, I think you think
sex,
yes, it will.
Maybe, except not really. And you'll have a hard time defending that, because otherwise you can't really believe that there's only two sexes, because there's not only two ways that genes can express themselves. But that's neither here nor there.
The point is
that the point is that identity is a purely internal thing.
Disprove my point, though.
The point is that identity is a purely internal thing. It doesn't rely on some external thing existing, right? Identity is an internal thing that one determines for themselves.
It cannot be measured.
I mean, it can be measured. You can measure it by asking somebody.
Well, not in the same way like genes or biology can be
Yes,
measured.
identity is a far more abstract concept than something as...
It is abstract. It is not a hard science. It's not based on something real.
Nobody ever said anything about sociology being a hard science, but it is still a science.
Well, earlier I was like, well, there's a difference between the two, and this entire like line of debate is me trying to, say that because you go like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference? Because sociologists say this, but that's the difference, though. You see what I mean?
I have no idea what you just said.
Okay, sorry. I'm speaking over myself a little bit. But what I was trying to say earlier is there's a difference between a biologist making a claim and a sociologist making a claim. Like you said
they're different
earlier,
sciences. Of course there's differences.
yes, but when they're talking about someone identifying, the sociologist can't say, I said earlier, he can't say like pure statement like, yes, this person actually does get, his word from God. Whereas a biologist can just take something like genes, or he can take someone's biology or someone's physics or whatever, and they can make
a biologist can't determine
statements.
The identity of a person.
Well, okay, now we're getting to the point. What do you mean by identity? Because I'm thinking like sex. But do you mean like whole ego?
Can a biologist determine whether somebody is a Steelers fan?
A what?
A Steelers fan.
What the fuck is that?
It's a sports team.
Oh. No.
Okay, can a biologist determine if somebody is a Catholic?
A biologist? No.
Okay, are those are being a Steelers fan or being a Catholic, are these kinds of identities?
Sure.
Okay, so there are lots of identities that biologists can't determine, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But
the claim here is merely the claim here is merely
not based on science. You would agree, yes? Being a Steelers fan or a Catholic has nothing to do with science.
They are parts of somebody's identity, is the point.
Yeah, but they have nothing to do with science, and you know it.
Yeah, of course they do. Of course they don't have you can study them study them with science, but like being a Steelers fan is not like a scientific claim. Like, of course it's not. It's just part of your identity.
It's not a
your
real
identity
claim.
isn't
It's
part.
not a real claim. It's not a true full claim.
Okay, so when when somebody says I'm a Steelers fan, you're saying that it's just not true.
You kind of misunderstand what I'm saying.
That is what you just said. That it's not a true claim.
If someone says, okay, if someone says there's a Steelers fan, okay?
Yep,
that's
that
based
guy
on
over there is
them.
a Steelers fan. Are you telling me that that's not true?
Well, that's based on them and them only. It could be on
Yeah,
true.
you're
yes.
right. It
could
is.
just lie.
It could also
It
be
could just lie.
It could also be based on
It
like
could
some
just lie, no?
They could just lie. You're right.
That's the point. So you can't. So if you just ask someone, so that's my point, right?
Yeah, people can lie. It turns
you
out.
can never
Yeah.
be for sure. You can ask someone. You can measure this, measure that, but you can never be for
Yeah,
sure.
could a biologist lie?
About hard sciences?
Yeah.
If you use the scientific method, literally no.
Oh, so biologists can't lie.
Well, you misunderstand what I'm saying again. I'm saying if they make a claim, right, using the scientific method, a scientific claim. Because, okay, if we're talking like a biologist can lie about what he ate for dinner, sure.
Can a biologist lie about the result? Can a biologist lie about the results of their study?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
so a biologist could lie.
The issue is that the study can be, reviewed and it will be found false.
Yeah, it can be. And by the way, there are ways that you can check to see, at least to get some information about whether somebody is, say, a Steelers fan. For example, do they have a jersey for, I don't know, the Ravens, but they don't have a jersey for the Steelers? Well, that would make you think that maybe they're not a Steelers fan. Or do they have do they have season tickets for the Cardinals but not for the Steelers? Oh, well then that would give you reason to think that they're maybe not a Steelers fan. And similarly, we can look for correlates. And by the way, that doesn't prove that they're not a Steelers fan if they have season tickets for the Cardinals. It just is, it would make you think, it would make you question, right? And so similarly, if somebody says, yeah, I'm a woman, if somebody says that, well, then you can go look at their life and you can see, well, there's all these features of you that's like, for example, like you have a Facebook post from yesterday that says, man, I feel like a man. Well, that would be kind of weird. It's evidence. It's not proof that you're lying, but it's evidence that something's amiss. Similarly, if you have, I don't know, if you have regular interactions and you're like, man, I just love having a penis, that would be evidence. that you're maybe lying, but it wouldn't be proof. So this is all to say, you can definitely use external pieces of data to determine whether somebody is lying about their identity. It won't be definitive proof, but you can definitely collect external data.
But you can never make a claim because.
What do you mean you can never make a claim? We use evidence to make claims all the time.
Okay, maybe claim is not the right word. A truth. I said truth. I don't know if that's like correct word for it. Like, you can't say, "Oh, I know for a fact, factually, this person is a Steelers fan." You cannot say that.
Yeah, and that's part of identities.
But you could
identities are internal, not external. Identities are internal. They're not externally verifiable with certainty. Sorry.
Okay.
That's how identities work.
So how the fuck would we say that like anything that relates to identity can be like confirmed scientifically? You cannot confirm it. You can say, well, you can observe
science isn't in the business of confirming things with certainty. That's not what science does.
With the most certainty possible, yes.
No, that's literally not what science does. Science provides evidence for claims, and it provides evidence against claims. That's the whole business of science.
Yeah, and it takes these claims and puts them against each other. Let's say like two claims are claiming something different.
And what you'll find is that one claim has more supporting evidence than another claim, and so then
they'll find
believe the claim that has more supporting claim. No, you don't get certainty from science. You never do.
You get the most certainty possible. Yes.
The most certainty possible is less than 100%.
Okay, but you cannot get almost any certainty for compared
sure you
to like
can.
hard sciences.
In the same way that look, if your complaint is merely that the soft sciences have less certainty than the hard sciences, you're getting no disagreement from me. But then that doesn't mean that you reject the soft sciences just because you have less certainty.
Well, I would go further and say the soft sciences that you're quoting are not supposed to make claims like a trans woman is a woman. They're not supposed to. They can say, well, that person identifies as a woman, but they cannot make that objective claim. You get what I'm saying?
Well, so that's a linguistic claim, by the way, not some sort of scientific claim. That's a linguistic claim about about the way that people use words.
Okay, well, my linguistic claim has meaning. That's like me saying 2 + 2 = 4, right? I'm not just making, I'm trying to say something greater.
Look,
I guess.
So if you understand a woman to be a certain kind of category, then it is just true that a transgender woman is a woman. If you understand a woman to be a different kind of category, then it might be false that a transgender woman is a woman. That's just a question of definitions. It's not a scientific question. The scientific question is whether or not gender is a distinct phenomenon from sex, which the scientific consensus is that it indeed is, and that these do not have to overlap with each other with 100% fidelity. That's a scientific claim, and that's something that can be tested, and it comes out in favor of the the gender is not equal to sex view. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to try and explain something to you, right? If you, let's say you have a person and you don't know their gender, right? You're not sure. Or sex or whatever. You're not sure about either, right? Actually, you don't know their gender or their sex.
Sure.
So like, okay, I'm going to go ask a biologist. A biologist says, well, I ran tests or whatever, and I can say that biologically, this person's, let's say, a man. Yes. And then you go as a sociologist that says, well, okay, what about the gender then? And the sociologist has to tell you, well, I don't know. Go ask them.
Could you hold on?
The problem?
Yeah. So let's play that game with the mental status of somebody. Suppose that you meet somebody, you've never met them before, and you want to determine whether or not they have chronic depression. What are you going to do?
Well, you can run tests. I think isn't there like
what do those tests do?
Chemical imbalance? Did they say?
No, we don't have any way we don't have any way to measure brain chemicals to test for depression.
Okay, well then depression's okay. Then it might just be a mood.
You don't think depression's real?
As to what sense?
It's a real phenomenon that exists in some humans.
Well, if there's no way to confirm it, like scientific, because I heard, okay, I know if like that's not true, but don't they say it's like, oh, it's a chemical imbalance thing, right?
That's one of the working hypotheses. But there's no way that you can crack somebody's brain open and then measure their neurotransmitters. We don't have the capability to do that.
Okay, so there's no scientific consensus on it.
I didn't make that claim. I said that we don't have the capability to like test somebody's neurochemistry to see if they have. Sorry, my nose is so itchy, but I can't touch it to see if they have depression. We don't have the tools for that.
That's unfortunate. Is there scientific consensus on transgenderism? Because you said yes earlier.
I don't know what you mean about scientific consensus on transgenderism. The point is that there is scientific consensus that gender and sex are different. And look, the fact that your view kind of leads you down to the fact that your view leads you to the absurdity that like depression is not a real thing, or
I
that
didn't
it's
say that.
okay. Well, do you think that depression is more real than gender?
What? Okay,
that's a question. Do you think
that
that depression is more, less, or equally real compared with gender?
is gender the biological one?
Gender is the identity one.
Okay.
Do you think
I
that's
would
more,
probably say
less?
yes, because at least
Okay, so you think that
at least they have
depression
like
is
a
more
chemical
real?
imbalance hypothesis.
Okay,
You know,
so
they have
so
something to make-
there are neurological hypotheses regarding the origin of the transgender phenomenon, stemming from different brain structures, for example. These hypotheses exist.
My point exactly. Just like with depression, there's no consensus. There's only hypotheses.
Right. So you think that so you agree that gender is equally real as depression, or gender identity is equally as real as depression.
As depression.
Yeah.
I would say no, but I don't know. I guess
Which one's more real?
I would say depression.
Okay, despite not being able to measure somebody's depressive levels, and instead you just have to talk to them to figure out if they're depressed.
Well, that's not what I said. I said if you can measure chemical imbalance, then you can't.
You can't.
Oh, you can't. You can't at all.
Yeah, no, we have no way to do that. There's no tool available that you can use to measure somebody's depression.
That's straight up impossible. Okay.
No, I mean, the way that you diagnose depression is you speak with a psychiatrist or you speak with a psychologist. I think it's a psychiatrist, and they will interview you and ask you questions about your internal experience and the way that you interact with the world. So the way that you determine depression, at least as far as I know, is you talk to the person. In the same way that you determine someone's gender identity is you talk to the person.
Both of these are social constructs. Yes.
Okay, so in your view, depression is not real, and that's the conclusion that you have to come to because you want to remain, I guess, hateful towards transgender people. That seems about
I'll
right.
say this, okay?
Unfortunately, I gotta let you go because I'm 25 minutes over and I have a doctor's appointment soon. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of rough, right? That's where you end up if you want to be anti-trans. You have to say that, like, depression isn't real, or really any self-report based psychological or psychiatric condition, right? Like, I don't even know if we have any non-self-reported ways to diagnose schizophrenia. Like, like, are there like clinical ways that you can like scan somebody's brain to see if they have schizophrenia? Like, how would you, and like, maybe there is, maybe there's like some, like, maybe you could do like an fMRI or something like this, but like, there are a lot of mental disorders or like, clinical mental disorders that the only way we diagnose them is by conversation with like a licensed psychiatrist or like a credentialed psychiatrist, right? Like that's just the case. So if your view requires that all of those things are fake as well, I don't know what to say to you. It's kind of just a really weird claim. Anyway, I'm going to read some super chats and then end the live because I have to go to a doctor's appointment. It's, unfortunate, but it is what it is. From user with the $5, thoughts on CIA technology ghost murmur. Sounds very woo-woo. I've looked into it. It seems like the technology is there, but I'm not sure if it's as impressive as they're making it out to be. From Johnny Carter with the $5 New Zealand, both of the US political parties are as anti-science as each other from an outsider's perspective. Well, I mean, that can't be true because, like, the Democrats generally tend to think that climate change is real, whereas Republicans don't. The Democrats also tend to agree with medical consensus as far as treatment is concerned, and Republicans tend to not too. So like there is definitely, like, I would agree that, like, to some extent the Democrats are anti-science, but like not nearly to the extent that that MAGA is. From Atheist in a Foxhole with the $2, nobody thinks more about trans people more than MAGA. That's true. That's a good point. From Randy Potatoes with the $2, boy's brain is smoother than the 1 kilogram silicon 28 sphere. It was pretty smooth. From Lost in FRP with the 110 Turkish lira, conservatism is in conflict with the scientific method. You don't conserve your point of view in science when your ideals or beliefs contradict with data. That's a good point. That's actually a really good point. From Kelly Schur with the $10. The anti-science bop, drop that silly thought, just faith it away and have a great day. That's a cute rhyme. From Cody with the $10, caller wouldn't hesitate to cite these same institutions if they had instead affirmed his views. That's a fair point too. Like, I can provide as many pieces of data, as many studies as they want about how gender and sex are not necessarily the same thing, or not the same thing, and they'll disregard it, right? From RJ Duhan with the $2, modern science is skewed towards leftist ideology. Well, that's because reality is skewed towards leftist ideology. But thanks for the $2. From Lost in FRP again, this guy trying to argue that MAGA is into anti-science while he is denying scientific consensus without any data or evidence. Nice work proving the stream's title. That's what tends to happen quite frequently, because we get into the nitty-gritty of this, and I bring up polls, and I bring up scientific institutions, and they're like, yeah, but that's not real, that's not true, I disagree with this. And like, then he's just being anti-science, right? From D Bizzle with the $2, WTH is a hard science. It's all science. Well, so there's often a distinction that's made between like the hard sciences and the soft sciences, where the hard sciences typically rely on like measurements that can be made about the natural world, like without invoking, you know, human interviews or, you know, those kinds of things. And the soft sciences kind of rely more, or can rely more on like self-reporting things, or on surveys, or on polling data, these kinds of things. So like that is a distinction that's made, but yeah, they are all science. As long as you're using the scientific method, it's science. From Bob the Monitor with the $5, they could just lie. It's so funny how these people become truth relativists as soon as the truth becomes inconvenient to them. Yeah, right? Like, yes, people can lie, that's true. People can lie about whether they're a Steelers fan too. From Eat Some Shorts with the $5, W Steelers reference. Look, it was the first sports team I could think of. From Ekipo with the €2, all these MAGA are disproving that racists' claims. Are disproving it? These MAGA are disproving that racists' claims. I don't follow. From Eat Some Shorts with the $5, Justin can confirm depression exists as a Browns fan. Funny. That's funny. You should tell it to Justin. From Simeon, and last from Simeon Urchin with the $5, do you have the Atmos article, Fossil Fuel Billionaires Are Bankrolling the Anti-Trans Movement, in your notes? It's a great investigation piece. No, I don't, but I should add it. And I should also read it, right? We will take a look at it later, and then we'll add it to the notes if it seems appropriate. That was the last super chat. I just want to make sure I don't miss any cash apps or something. I thought I did see a cash app from someone. Yes, a cash app from Shay with the $20. Thank you so much, Shay. I forgot this topic has infuriating callers. It does. It does, because they just really like talking about they just really like talking about trans people. Like so much. Because it's the one thing that they think that trans people have, or that science is on their side on. Except, it's not. What's on their side is like a first semester course in biology, maybe? But not really. Like, it's like they take one class in biology and then they forget about the rest of it. Like, it turns out that biology goes deeper than just male, female, ooga booga, right? Anyway, I'm going to end the live stream here because I do have a doctor's appointment to get to, and it's a fairly important one. Even though it's not for a little bit, I do need to get ready and I need to make some phone calls. So thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you tomorrow for some more debate. It won't be this topic. We'll do a different topic tomorrow, and I'll see you then. So take care, everybody. Make sure to have a good Thursday.